20 rounds left. 6 soldiers bleeding out in a fog-choked mountain grave. 3 sides of enemy fire closing in like wolves on wounded prey. When Captain Ryland Cross pressed the emergency beacon, the one he'd sworn he'd never touch, he wasn't calling for rescue. He was documenting how his team died. The ambush had been flawless. Mortars walking closer with every blast. A drone circling overhead like a mechanical vulture. Blood pooling faster than Sergeant Tessa Vale could plug the holes. Their shallow depression in the rocks wasn't a defensive position. It was a mass grave with terrible timing. Then, somewhere in the frozen darkness above, an unseen rifle chambered a single round, and the entire night shattered with one impossible shot. What happened next shouldn't have been possible. One shooter, one ghost, and a body count that turned hunters into prey. If you want to see how one woman dismantled an entire enemy force in the dark, stick with me until the end. Drop a like, leave a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels, and let's dive into the mountains where survival met something far more dangerous than death. The mission had gone to hell exactly 4 minutes after insertion. Captain Ryland Cross knew this because he'd been checking his watch when the first mortar round hit. 0347 hours. The explosion turned a cluster of pine trees into matchsticks and sent his recon team scrambling for cover that didn't exist. The second round landed closer. The third closer still. Professional. Methodical. Walking fire from someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Contact north. Multiple hostiles. Estimated 12 to 15. That was Corporal Davis, his voice cracking just enough to betray his age. 22 years old, 3 months in country. Good eyes, steady hands, and right now absolutely terrified as tracers cut through the fog like luminous razors. Suppressing fire, west side! Sergeant Tessa Vale's voice cut through the chaos with the kind of calm that came from 7 years of doing this dance. Her rifle barked twice, 3 times. Someone screamed in the distance. They're flanking! Ryland, we need to move now! But there was nowhere to move. They were pinned on a narrow mountain shelf with their backs against a sheer rock face and a 200-foot drop on the other side. The operation brief had called it tactically defensible. The brief had been written by someone who'd never had mortars raining down on their head while machine gun fire chewed the landscape into gravel. Ryland dropped behind a boulder that wouldn't stop anything bigger than a handgun round and keyed his radio. Viper 6 to Overwatch, we are under heavy contact. Grid November Whiskey 4723, immediate fire support requested. Static. Then a voice so distorted he could barely make it out. Per 6, Overwatch cop. Heavy interference, no available? The transmission died. Shit. Ryland slammed the handset against the rock. Shit, shit, shit. Boss! That was Private Chen, 19 years old and currently trying to make himself smaller than physics allowed behind a fallen log. Boss, they've got a drone, quadcopter, thermal signature. Ryland looked up just long enough to see it. A dark shape circling above the fog layer, rotors barely audible under the gunfire. Someone was painting them, marking their position, calling in more accurate fire. Vale, I need options! Tessa appeared at his elbow like a ghost, her face streaked with mud and someone else's blood. We've got maybe 30 rounds of rifle ammo left between the 6 of us. Davis has a fractured clavicle from the first blast. Morrison took shrapnel to the leg. Chen's holding together, but he's running on adrenaline and bad ideas. And Lance... Her voice caught. Just for a second. Just long enough. Lance is bleeding out from a gut shot, and there's nothing I can do about it without a Casavac bird. Lance Reyes. 24. Engaged. Baby on the way. Reland forced himself to look at the kid. He was gray. Shock gray. The kind of pale that came right before the body gave up. Tessa had packed the wound with gauze that was already soaked through, and Lance's breathing sounded like wet cardboard tearing. How long? Ryland asked quietly. Minutes. Maybe an hour, if God's feeling generous. Tessa's hands were shaking. She was the best combat medic Ryland had ever worked with, and her hands were shaking because she knew there was nothing left to do. Ryland, we need extraction now, or we're going to be carrying bodies instead of wounded. Another mortar round hit. This one close enough that Ryland felt the pressure wave in his teeth. Rocks and frozen dirt rained down on them. When the smoke cleared, he could see shapes moving through the fog. Disciplined, coordinated. Professional soldiers doing professional work. They were being hunted by people who knew exactly what they were doing. Viper 6 to any station. This is an emergency broadcast on all channels. Ryland was speaking into the radio even though he knew it was pointless. The jamming was too heavy. But he kept talking anyway because the alternative was accepting that they were already dead. 6 souls, critically wounded, requesting immediate Casavac and fire support. Grid. Boss. Chen's voice was very small. Boss, they're surrounding us. Ryland looked up. The fog was thick enough to turn the world into a gray nothing, But through it he could see them, shadows becoming soldiers, moving in a textbook three-sided assault pattern, north, west, and east, leaving the south face open only because it was a sheer drop into a gorge, classic hammer and anvil. They weren't trying to kill Ryland's team quickly. They were trying to make them choose between surrender and a long fall. Defensive positions, Ryland said. His voice sounded steadier than he felt. Make every shot count. If they want us, they're going to pay for it. With what? Davis asked. The kid was cradling his broken shoulder, his rifle propped awkwardly against his good side. Boss, I've got 6 rounds. 6. I can't even hold the weapon steady. Then make those 6 rounds the best shooting you've ever done. Ryland checked his own magazine. 14 rounds. His sidearm had 2 more mags. Tessa had maybe 12 rifle rounds left. Morrison was barely conscious. Chen looked like he might throw up or open fire randomly. 50-50 odds on which came first. They had perhaps 60 rounds of ammunition total. The enemy had mortars, machine guns, a drone, and numerical superiority. This wasn't a fight. It was an execution with extra steps. Sir? Tessa was looking at him with an expression he'd seen before. On a mission in Kandahar, when they'd been pinned down for 18 hours. On an operation in Syria, when half the team took casualties from an IED. It was the look that said, I trust you, but I know we're dying here. I know, Ryland said quietly. He pulled the emergency beacon from his vest. It was a small gray cylinder, barely bigger than a road flare, with a single red button under a protective cap. He'd carried it for 3 years and never once touched it. The beacon was supposed to be for worst-case scenarios only. Catastrophic failures. Situations where everything had gone so completely wrong that burning your position to call for help was worth the risk. This qualified. Ryland flipped the protective cap. What are you doing? Tessa asked. Calling in a miracle. That thing broadcasts on every channel. It'll give away our exact position to every hostile force within 50 kilometers. They already know where we are. Look around, Tess. We're past stealth. Tessa opened her mouth, closed it, nodded once. Ryland pressed the button. The beacon didn't make a sound. It just started pulsing a steady red glow that seemed absurdly bright in the pre-dawn darkness. Somewhere in the electromagnetic spectrum, it was screaming for help on every frequency. Satellite uplinks, emergency channels. Anything with a receiver would hear it. So would the enemy. Contact east! Chen opened fire. 3 rounds. A shadow dropped, but 2 more appeared to replace it. The assault was accelerating. They'd seen the beacon. They knew time was running out. A machine gun opened up from the western approach. Rounds spanged off the rocks around them. Morrison screamed, a high, awful sound that meant he'd been hit again. Davis was firing his rifle one-handed, tears streaming down his face, the recoil slamming his broken shoulder with every shot. Tessa was trying to keep Lance alive with pressure and prayers, her hands slick with blood, whispering things Ryland couldn't hear. This was it. This was how it ended. 6 soldiers in a shallow depression on a mountain nobody would remember, dying slowly because someone in intelligence had read the terrain wrong and someone in command had signed off on a mission that should never have been approved. Ryland put his last magazine in his rifle and prepared to make his final rounds count. Then, somewhere high above them, so far above that the sound barely registered through the gunfire, a rifle shot cracked through the night, and the machine gun went silent. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. The sudden absence of that hammering machine gun fire was so complete it felt like a physical thing, like the world had been pressing down on them and suddenly let go. Ryland's ears were ringing, his heart was trying to punch through his ribs. He looked at Tessa. She looked back with an expression that said, "Did that just happen?" "What the hell?" Chen started. Another shot. High, distant, professional. An enemy soldier who'd been advancing on the northern approach stumbled, dropped his weapon, and fell forward into the rocks. Clean, efficient, dead before he hit the ground. "Sniper!" someone shouted in the distance. Not English. The accent was Eastern European. "Sniper! Seaver!" The voice cut off with a third shot. Ryland pressed himself against the rock and tried to process what was happening. Someone was shooting at the enemy. Someone with a precision rifle and the skill to make impossibly long shots through fog and darkness. Someone who apparently gave enough of a damn about 6 trapped soldiers to enter a firefight that any sane person would avoid. "Who the hell is that?" Davis asked. He sounded young again, hopeful, like maybe they weren't dying after all. "I don't know," Ryland said, "but they just bought us time. Tess. Status on Lance? Fading. I need to get him warmed up and get an IV in him or he's gone. Do it! Chen, Morrison, eyes on those approaches. If anyone gets close, you light them up. Davis, watch the drone." "It's gone, boss. Pulled back when the shooting started." "Smart." Whoever was running that drone knew a sniper could drop it as easily as a soldier. They were repositioning, reassessing. The entire enemy assault had stumbled when that first machine gunner fell, and now they were trying to figure out what had just walked into their fight. Rylan keyed his radio. Unknown shooter, this is Viper 6. If you can hear this, we are 6 souls, critically wounded, holding grid November whiskey, 4723. We are combat ineffective and require immediate extraction. Please acknowledge. Static. Just static and the sound of wind cutting through the rocks. Then, in the distance, 2 more shots, spaced maybe 4 seconds apart. Professional, measured, each one followed by shouting in the enemy lines, panic spreading like blood in water. They're falling back, Chen sounded amazed. Boss, they're actually pulling back on the west side. Rylan risked a look. The kid was right. The western assault line, the one that had been advancing with machine gun support, was collapsing. Soldiers were retreating into the fog, moving fast, discipline breaking down. Someone was shouting orders, but nobody was listening. One shooter had just shattered an entire assault element. Tess, tell me Lance is stabilizing. He's not getting worse. That's the best I can give you. It would have to be enough. Another shot rang out. This one, from a completely different angle, maybe northeast instead of north. The shooter had relocated, changed position. And with that single shot, an enemy officer who'd been trying to rally his troops on the northern approach dropped mid-sentence. The effect was immediate. The northern line broke. Soldiers scattered. Discipline evaporated. Rylan had seen a lot of combat in his career, but he'd never seen anything like this. One person, was dismantling a coordinated assault with nothing but precise fire and fear. No explosions, no suppressing fire. Just single shots that turned trained soldiers into panicked animals. Boss, I'm picking up radio chatter, Davis said. He had one earbud in, monitoring the enemy frequencies they'd identified during the initial contact. They're calling for reinforcements. Armor. A PCs and a BTR rolling up from the valley. The brief moment of hope died. How long? 30 minutes, maybe less. Yeah. Oh, armored personnel carriers. ABTR. An 8-wheeled beast with a 14.5mm cannon that could chew through anything short of a tank. Against that, a sniper rifle was just an expensive club. You couldn't precision shoot your way through steel plate. Rylan looked at his team. Morrison was unconscious. Lance was gray and getting grayer. Davis had a broken shoulder and the shakes. Chen looked like he might break and run at any second. Tessa was holding together through sheer force of will, but even she had limits. They had minutes before the enemy reinforcements arrived. Maybe an hour before a Casavac bird could reach them, and that was assuming someone had heard the beacon and was already scrambling a response. The math didn't work. All right, Rylan said quietly. New plan. We hold this position until extraction arrives or we run out of ammunition. We do not surrender. We do not run. We make them pay for every meter of ground. Understood? A chorus of weak affirmatives. Rylan checked his rifle. 12 rounds. He pulled his sidearm and checked that too. 2 magazines, 15 rounds each, 42 rounds total. He could make that last maybe 3 minutes against determined infantry. Against armor? He could throw the bullets and hope they dented the paint. Another shot cracked through the pre-dawn air. Somewhere on the eastern approach, someone died. The enemy was still out there, still trying to regroup, but that ghost on the ridge kept picking them apart. Methodical. Merciless. Professional in a way that was almost beautiful. Rylan found himself wondering who she was, because he knew somehow that it was a woman. Don't ask him how. Maybe it was the way she moved, the way she relocated after every few shots, never staying in one place, never giving them a chance to triangulate her position. Maybe it was the absolute economy of fire. No wasted shots. No showing off. Just cold, calculated violence delivered with surgical precision. Or maybe it was the fact that she'd entered a fight she had no stake in and was systematically destroying an enemy force to save people she'd never met. That took a particular kind of courage. Movement! Chen's voice cracked. South side, coming up the gorge! Rylan spun. The south side was supposed to be secure, a sheer drop that no one could climb. But through the fog, he could see ropes, grappling hooks, at least 3 soldiers hauling themselves up the cliff face. Smart. While everyone was focused on the 3-sided assault, someone had thought to try the impossible approach. Tess, on it! Tessa left Lance's side, brought her rifle up, and fired twice. The first climber dropped. The second tried to bring a weapon to bear and took a round through the shoulder. He fell screaming. The third climber made it over the edge. Rylan put 2 rounds center mass. The man stumbled back, caught his foot on a rock, and tumbled over the edge into the fog. The screaming lasted 5 seconds. Then it stopped. They're committed, Tessa said. Her voice was flat, combat flat. The tone that came when you stopped being scared and started being something else. Something colder. They want us dead bad enough to climb a cliff under fire. Why? Because we saw something, Ryland said. Or they think we did. And they can't risk us reporting it. What did we see? Does it matter? Tessa thought about it, shook her head. No, I guess it doesn't. Another shot from their guardian angel, another enemy soldier down, but the shots were coming slower now. The targets were getting scarce. The enemy had pulled back into the fog and the rocks, waiting for their armor to arrive. When it did, the sniper would be forced to choose, stay and die, or withdraw and leave Ryland's team to their fate. Ryland didn't know which she'd choose. He wasn't sure he wanted to know. Sir, Davis was looking at him with eyes that were too old for his face. Sir, if we don't make it, we're making it, Corporal. But if we don't, then we die doing our jobs, and someone will find our bodies and send us home, and our families will be told we died serving our country. That's the deal, Davis. That's what we signed up for. That's a shit deal. Ryland smiled. It felt wrong on his face. Yeah, it really is. The fog was starting to thin. Dawn was coming. In the growing light, Ryland could see just how exposed they really were. The shallow depression that had felt like cover in the darkness was really just a divot in the rocks. There was no real protection, no fallback position, just 6 soldiers, a handful of ammunition, and a whole lot of prayer. Somewhere in the valley below, an engine growled, then another, then a third. The armor was coming. The first APC appeared like a prehistoric beast emerging from fog. Ryland heard it before he saw it, the deep diesel rumble that meant heavy machinery and bad news. Then the nose pushed through the mist, an angular Soviet-era vehicle with 8 wheels and a turret mounting a 14.5mm heavy machine gun that could turn a human body into pink mist. Behind it, a second APC. Then, crawling up the mountain road like a mechanical nightmare, a BTR-80, bigger, meaner, equipped with a 30mm autocannon that could level a building. Oh, we are so fucked, Chen whispered. Ryland didn't disagree. The vehicles ground to a halt about 200 meters down the slope. Smart positioning, far enough back that small arms fire wouldn't do anything, close enough that their heavy weapons could tear the mountainside apart. Ryland watched as hatches opened and soldiers poured out. Fresh troops. Not the ones who'd been scattered by the sniper. These were reinforcements, at least 20 men, probably more. Tess, how's Lance? Alive. Barely. Morrison? Unconscious. Stable. Davis? The corporal was sitting with his back against a rock, his face the color of old snow. I'm good, Sergeant. Just peachy. He wasn't good. None of them were good. But they were still breathing, which was something. Ryland raised his binoculars and studied the vehicles. Standard troop deployment. The soldiers were forming up behind the APCs, using them for cover while they assessed the situation. Someone in command was being smart. They'd heard about the sniper. They weren't rushing in. They're waiting for something, Tessa said. Daylight. Once they can see clearly, they'll bring up the BTR and shell us until there's nothing left to bury. How long? Ryland checked his watch. The sky was going from black to gray. 20 minutes, maybe 30. And extraction? If someone heard the beacon and scrambled immediately, 45 minutes. Maybe an hour. Tessa did the math in her head. Her face said it all. They weren't going to make it. A radio crackled. Not theirs. One of the enemy handsets they'd stripped off a body during the initial contact. Someone was speaking rapid fire in a language Ryland didn't recognize. Russian, maybe. Or Ukrainian. The voice sounded angry. Anyone speak? Ryland started. That's Russian, Davis interrupted. My grandmother. I picked up a little. He's saying... The kid's face went pale. He's calling in artillery. What? Artillery. Mortar team, grid coordinates, fire mission. They're going to level this entire mountainside. Of course they were. Why risk soldiers when you could just erase the problem with high explosives? Ryland keyed his radio one more time. Unknown shooter, this is Viper 6. If you're still out there, you need to withdraw. Hostiles are calling in artillery. There's nothing more you can do. Get out while you can. Static. Then, impossibly, a voice. Female. Calm. Barely above a whisper. Negative, Viper 6. Stay low. The transmission cut off. Ryland stared at the radio. Did she just... A rifle shot cracked across the valley. The soldier on top of the lead APC, the one manning the heavy machine gun, jerked backward and fell off the vehicle. Dead before he hit the ground. Chaos erupted. Soldiers scattered. Officers screamed orders. The second APC started backing up, its driver panicking, but the road was narrow, steep, no room to maneuver. Another shot. The windshield of the lead APC spiderwebbed. The vehicle lurched left and slammed into a boulder, its front wheels spinning uselessly. "She's engaging the armor," Tessa said. She sounded awed. "She's actually engaging—" A third shot punched through the external fuel tank on the second APC. For a moment, nothing happened. Then flames erupted. Soldiers abandoned the vehicle, sprinting for cover as black smoke poured into the sky. The BTR was still operational. Its turret swiveled, the 30mm cannon searching for a target it couldn't see. The commander stood in the top hatch, binoculars pressed to his face, barking orders. Rylan watched through his own binoculars as the woman, whoever she was, made her shot. The commander dropped like someone had cut his strings. The BTR stopped moving. Its engine idled. Nobody wanted to take command. Nobody wanted to be the next one in that hatch. "Jesus Christ," Chen breathed. She'd just decapitated their entire command structure. She had. In less than 60 seconds, she'd disabled 2 vehicles, killed a commander, and turned an organized assault into a panicked retreat. Rylan had spent 15 years in the military, and he'd never seen anything like it. Then an enemy sniper fired back. The shot came from high on the western ridge, a position Rylan hadn't even known was occupied. Someone had been hiding up there, waiting. A counter-sniper. And they'd just announced themselves. "No," Rylan whispered. "No, no, no." 2 shots. Almost simultaneous. So close together they sounded like one. For 3 eternal seconds, silence. Then a body tumbled down the western cliff face, bouncing off rocks, limbs flailing. The enemy sniper. Dead. A heartbeat later, another shot rang out from a completely different position, northeast, maybe 300 meters from where the woman had fired before. She'd won the duel, relocated, and re-engaged before Rylan's brain had even processed what happened. Another enemy soldier dropped beside the stalled BTR. That broke them. The remaining hostiles abandoned their vehicles and ran. Some headed back down the mountain road. Others scattered into the gorge. A few threw down their weapons and sprinted south without looking back. In less than 5 minutes, one shooter had dismantled an armored convoy and routed 40-plus enemy soldiers. Rylan lowered his binoculars with shaking hands. "Boss," Tessa said quietly. "Boss, who the hell is she?" "I don't know." That was impossible. Those shots were impossible." "I know. Rylan, I've been doing this for 7 years and I've never seen—" "I know, Tess, I know." The mountain went quiet. No gunfire, no engines, just wind and the crackle of the burning APC. Dawn was coming on properly now, painting the fog orange and gold. In the growing light, Rylan could see bodies scattered across the landscape. Enemy soldiers who'd been advancing with confidence an hour ago were now just shapes in the dirt. All because one woman had decided 6 strangers were worth saving. Rylan's radio crackled. "Viper 6, this is Guardian 2-3. We are inbound on your position, ETA 12 minutes. Advise if LZ is secure." Extraction. Finally. Rylan keyed the mic. "Guardian 2-3, LZ is contested. Stand by." "Contested how, Viper 6? 4 hostiles on the southern ridge overlooking the only flat ground. If you try to land, they'll light you up." A pause. Then, "Understood. We'll hold at distance and provide aerial support. Can you mark targets?" "Negative. Targets are concealed and we're combat ineffective." Another pause. Longer this time. "Copy that, Viper 6. We'll figure something out. Hold tight." The transmission ended. Rylan looked at Tessa. "They can't land." "I heard. We're so close, and we can't—" A rifle shot interrupted him. On the southern ridge, a hostile soldier who'd been setting up a firing position suddenly collapsed. Another shot, another body, then a third. The woman. She was clearing the landing zone. The last enemy fighter raised an RPG, a rocket-propelled grenade, and aimed it toward the ridge where she'd been shooting from. Rylan's throat locked. If that RPG found its mark— The woman's rifle flashed. The shooter dropped the same instant he pulled the trigger. The rocket sailed wild, passed harmlessly over the ridge, and detonated somewhere in the distance. The LZ was clear. "Guardian 2-3, Viper 6, LZ is secure." "Say again." "LZ is secure. Come get us." "Roger that, Viper 6, inbound now." Rylan heard the helicopters before he saw them. 2 Blackhawks flying low and fast, their rotors beating the air into submission. They came in hard, flared at the last second, and slammed onto the rocky shelf with the kind of landing that prioritized speed over comfort. Medics poured out before the wheels even settled. "Go!" Rylan shouted. "Chen, Davis, get Morrison on that bird. Tess, get Lance." I've got him." Everything became motion and noise. The medics took over, efficient and fast. loading the wounded onto stretchers. Someone was shouting about IV lines. Someone else was calling for blood. The helicopter engine screamed, and through it all, Rylan kept scanning the ridge, looking for her. She appeared like smoke given form, small, mud-streaked, carrying a long rifle with a suppressor that made it look like something from a science fiction film. No insignia, no rank, no identifying markers. She moved with the kind of economy that came from experience, her steps sure even on the treacherous rocks. She was young, younger than Rylan had expected. Maybe late 20s, dark hair tied back, eyes that didn't match her face, too old, too tired, like she'd seen 1,000 things she wished she could forget. She walked straight to Lance's stretcher and pulled something from her pack. A small white package. Advanced clotting agents, military grade. The kind of thing that could save a life if used right. She handed it to the medic without a word. "This will hold him," she said. Her voice was quiet, controlled. American accent. West Coast, maybe. "Pack it tight and keep pressure. He'll make it." Then she moved to Morrison and did the same assessment. "Pneumothorax, partially collapsed lung. Needs a chest tube before altitude. Do it now." The medic stared. "Who are you?" "Someone who knows what she's doing. Chest tube, now." The medic scrambled to comply. Rylan caught up to her as she was checking Davis. "You saved our lives." She glanced at him, just once, then went back to examining Davis's shoulder. "Fractured clavicle, displaced. He needs surgery, but it can wait until you're back at base." She looked at Davis. "Don't try to lift anything. Don't try to be a hero. Just sit still and let the medics do their job." Davis nodded mutely. Rylan tried again. "I need your name. For the report. You just turned the tide of an entire battle. Command needs to know, Reeve. Is that a call sign or it's all you need? I need more than that. I need..." She turned to face him properly. Up close, he could see the mud caked in her hair, the dark circles under her eyes, the way her hands moved with absolute certainty, even though she'd probably been awake for 36 hours straight. "You need to get on that helicopter," she said quietly. "You need to take care of your people. That's what you need. Come with us. We'll extract you, get you cleaned up, debriefed. I have my own mission." "What mission?" She smiled. It was a sad thing. The kind that doesn't get written in reports. "Reeve. Your team is going to survive, Captain. Lance will keep his leg if the medics do their job. Morrison will breathe on his own again. Davis will heal. Your Sergeant Vale..." She glanced at Tessa, who was helping load Lance. "She's one hell of a medic. You're lucky to have her." "We're lucky to have you." "No." She shook her head. "You're lucky I was close enough to hear your beacon." The helicopter pilot was shouting. Time to go. The enemy would regroup. More forces would come. They needed to leave. Rylan made one last attempt. "Let me help you. Whatever your mission is to take care of the people who depend on you. Mine is something else." She stepped back. "Go, Captain, before someone else decides to make a play." "I don't even know how to thank you." "Don't." She turned toward the ridge. "Just survive." "That's thanks enough." And then she was walking away, back toward the mountains, back toward whatever nightmare she was chasing. Rylan watched her until she disappeared into the fog and the rocks, until she was nothing but a memory of impossible shots and quiet competence. "Sir!" The crew chief was waving frantically. "We need to leave now!" Rylan climbed into the helicopter. The Blackhawks lifted off in a storm of rotor wash and noise. Through the open door, Rylan watched the mountain fall away. Somewhere down there, hidden in the peaks and the fog, a woman named Reeve was walking toward her own mission. Alone. Unsupported. Unknown. He would never see her again. But he would never forget her either. The debrief lasted 6 hours. Rylan sat in a gray room with gray walls and told his story to gray men who wrote gray reports. He told them about the ambush, the beacon, the sniper who appeared from nowhere and systematically dismantled an enemy force. He told them about Reeve. They asked questions. A lot of questions. Questions that danced around the edges of classification and need to know. Questions that made it clear they knew more than they were saying. Finally, a colonel with 20 years in special operations and eyes like flint leaned back in his chair and said, "Captain Cross, I want you to understand something very clearly. The events you've described will be recorded with certain redactions. The sniper you encountered will not appear in any official report. As far as the Army is concerned, your team fought their way out using tactical discipline and blind luck. That's not what happened. That's what the report will say." "Why?" The colonel smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Because some assets are too valuable to acknowledge. Because some people do work that can't be tied to official channels. And because, Captain, you and your team are alive because someone broke about 40 different regulations to save you." I don't understand. You're not supposed to. The colonel stood. Your team performed admirably under impossible circumstances. Lance Reyes will make a full recovery. Morrison will be stateside for 6 months, but he'll walk again. Davis will heal. Sergeant Vale will probably get a commendation. You'll all get to go home and tell your families you did your jobs. That's the win, Captain. Don't look for anything beyond that. Ryland stood too. And Reeve? I don't know anyone by that name. She saved 6 lives. Then she did her job, same as you. The colonel extended his hand. Welcome home, Captain. The handshake was firm, professional, final. Reelan left the debriefing and found his team waiting outside. Tessa looked exhausted. Chen looked shell-shocked. Davis was in a sling. Morrison was on medical leave, but he'd sent a message. Tell the boss I owe him a beer. Lance was in surgery, but stable. The doctor said he'd dance at his wedding. They stood there in the hallway, 6 soldiers who shouldn't have survived, and nobody said anything for a long time. Finally, Tessa broke the silence. They're not going to acknowledge her, are they? No. That's bullshit. Yeah. We should do something. Reelan thought about it, about a woman walking alone into the mountains, about impossible shots through fog and darkness, about the kind of courage that didn't need medals or recognition. We remember, he said quietly, every year. We get together, we set one empty chair at the table, we remember the woman who refused to let us die. That's not enough, Chen said. It's what we have. They stood there for another minute. Then, one by one, they nodded. Some promises are kept in silence. Some debts are paid with memory. Some heroes live only in the stories told by people who should have died but didn't. Rylan went home 3 days later. He hugged his wife. He held his daughter. He tried to explain where he'd been without explaining anything at all. At night, he dreamed of mountains and fog and a woman named Reeve. He would dream about her for the rest of his life. The nightmare started 3 weeks after Rylan came home. Always the same. Mountains, fog, the sound of mortars walking closer. Lance bleeding out while Tessa's hands shook. The moment when he pressed that beacon and thought he'd just documented how they all died. Then the rifle shot that changed everything. He'd wake up gasping, sheets soaked with sweat, his wife's hand on his shoulder asking if he was okay. He'd lie and say yes. She'd lie and say she believed him. The VA therapist called it survivor's guilt, said it was normal, said it would fade with time and medication and processing. Rylan nodded and took the pills and didn't mention that he wasn't haunted by the soldiers who died. He was haunted by the one who lived. Reeve. Who was she? Where had she come from? What mission had been important enough to walk away from extraction and disappear back into those mountains alone? The questions ate at him. The Army said they didn't know anyone by that name. His security clearance wasn't high enough to ask better questions. The colonel who'd debriefed him had made it clear the conversation was over. But Rylan couldn't let it go. 2 months after the mission, he started digging. Quietly. Carefully. Using contacts who owed him favors and channels that wouldn't raise flags. He wasn't looking to expose her. He just needed to understand. Needed to know that she'd made it out of those mountains. Needed to confirm she was real and not some ghost his traumatized brain had conjured to make sense of surviving the impossible. What he found was nothing. No service records, no deployment histories, no personnel files. It was like she didn't exist. Like the Army had scrubbed her from every database, every archive, every piece of documentation that might prove she'd ever worn a uniform. Or maybe she'd never been Army at all. That thought kept him up at night even more than the nightmares. 3 months after the mission, Rylan's team had their first reunion dinner. They'd promised to meet every year, but nobody wanted to wait that long. They needed to see each other, needed to confirm they were all still alive. They met at a steakhouse in Virginia. Lance showed up on crutches, but walking. Morrison came in a wheelchair, but promised the doctors said he'd be running again by summer. Davis's shoulder was healing. Chen looked like he'd aged 5 years, but his smile was genuine. Tessa walked in last, and when she saw them all together, she started crying and didn't stop for 10 minutes. They set one empty chair at the table. For 2 hours, they ate and drank and didn't talk about the mountains. They talked about families and recovery and the mundane difficulties of adjusting to life after combat. Safe topics. Normal topics. The kind of conversation that let them pretend they were regular people who'd never had to choose between dying slowly and dying fast. Then Lance raised his glass. To Reeve, he said quietly. Whoever she is, wherever she is, I hope she knows she gave me a life I didn't think I'd get to live. They drank to that. All of them. Reelan drank last, staring at that empty chair and wondering if she was out there somewhere having her own nightmares, her own impossible mission, her own reasons for walking away from people who wanted to thank her. The dinner ended with promises to meet again, to stay in touch, to remember. Rylan went home and couldn't sleep. At 2 in the morning, he was sitting in his kitchen with a laptop, running searches he knew wouldn't go anywhere. Female snipers, special operations, black programs. Anything that might give him a clue. His wife found him at 4 a.m., still searching. "Rylan," she said gently, "come to bed. I need to find her." "Why?" "Because she saved my life and I don't even know who she is." His wife sat down across from him. She was a nurse. She'd spent 15 years dealing with trauma and grief and people who couldn't let go of things that hurt them. She knew all the right things to say. She also knew when not to say them. "Maybe she doesn't want to be found," she said finally. "Maybe, but I need to try." "What happens if you do find her?" Rylan thought about it. "I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe I just need to know she's okay. And if she's not okay?" He didn't have an answer for that. His wife reached across the table and closed the laptop. "You can't save everyone, Rylan. You can't fix everything. Sometimes people do what they do, and then they disappear, and that's the end of the story." "This doesn't feel like the end." "I know, but maybe it has to be." She was right. Rylan knew she was right, but knowing didn't help. 4 months after the mission, the official report was declassified and released, at least the version they were allowed to see. Rylan read it 3 times looking for any mention of Reeve. There was nothing. The report said Viper Recon had been ambushed, had fought their way to a defensible position, had called for extraction, and had been successfully evacuated with casualties but no deaths. 20 pages of military bureaucracy that turned 6 people's near-death experience into a footnote about tactical response times and equipment failures. The sniper who'd saved them didn't exist in the official record. Rylan showed the report to Tessa. They met at a coffee shop near her apartment. She read it twice, set it down, and looked at him with tired eyes. "They erased her," she said. "Looks that way." "That's not right." "No, it's not." "So what do we do?" Rylan had been asking himself the same question. "Nothing. We remember. We tell the story to people we trust. We keep that chair empty at dinner, but we don't make noise. Because if they erased her from the record, they did it for a reason. And if we start asking too many questions, we might make trouble for her." Tessa considered that. "You think she's still out there, still operating?" "I think someone who's that good doesn't just retire." "She could be dead." "She could be. But I don't think so." "Why not?" Rylan thought about those impossible shots through fog and darkness, the way she'd relocated after every few rounds, the absolute economy of violence, the way she'd assessed his team's wounds with the confidence of someone who'd seen it all before. "Because people that competent don't die easy," he said. Tessa smiled. It was a sad thing. "I hope you're right." They finished their coffee and went their separate ways. Rylan drove home thinking about empty chairs and unanswered questions, and women who saved lives and then disappeared into mountains. He was still thinking about it when his phone rang. Unknown number. Rylan almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Captain Cross?" The voice was male, professional, familiar in a way Rylan couldn't place. "Who is this?" "Someone who knows you've been asking questions you shouldn't." Rylan's stomach went cold. "I don't know what you're talking about. Database queries, personnel searches, freedom of information requests. You've been very thorough, also very obvious." "I'm just trying to..." "I know what you're trying to do, and I'm calling to tell you to stop." "Who are you?" "Someone who wants you to understand that the woman who saved your life did so at considerable personal risk. She broke protocol. She endangered her own mission. She exposed herself to enemy fire. She did this because she heard your beacon and decided 6 lives were worth the cost." Rylan's hand tightened on the phone. "Is she okay?" A pause. "That's not information I can share." "Then why are you calling?" "To tell you that continued interest in her identity puts her at risk. There are people who would very much like to know who she is and where she operates. Your searches are creating a trail. That trail could be followed by people who don't have her best interests at heart. I'm not trying to expose her. I just want to... I know what you want, and the answer is, let it go. She doesn't want to be found. She doesn't want recognition. She did her job and moved on. You should do the same. Can you at least tell me if she made it out of those mountains?" Another pause. Longer this time. "She completed her mission. That's all I can say." "Is she still..." The line went dead. Rylan sat in his car for 20 minutes staring at the phone. The message was clear. Stop looking, stop asking, stop making noise, for her sake as much as his own. He deleted his search history, closed the files, stopped making inquiries. But he didn't stop wondering. 6 months after the mission, Rylan was back on active duty, light duty, training rotations. Nothing like the deployment that had almost killed him. The Army said he needed time to recover. His therapist said he needed time to process. His wife said he needed to be home more. They were all probably right. He was at the base running a training exercise for new recruits when his phone buzzed. Text message. Unknown number. Stop looking for ghosts. Some people are meant to disappear. Reland stared at the message. It could have been from the man who'd called him. Could have been from someone else entirely. Could have been a coincidence. Or it could have been from her. He typed a response. Are you safe? The message sat there for 5 minutes. Then, delivered. But no reply. Reland waited an hour. Nothing. He went back to work trying not to think about it. That night, alone in his office, he wrote a letter he knew he'd never send. He wrote about the mountains and the fog and the moment when he thought his team was going to die. He wrote about the rifle shots that turned the tide. He wrote about landing zones cleared by impossible marksmanship and wounds assessed with professional confidence. He wrote about an empty chair at a table and 6 people who met every year to remember someone they'd never really known. He wrote, I don't know who you are or where you are, but I hope you're okay. I hope whatever mission you're on is worth the cost. I hope you know that 6 people are alive because of you, and that matters. That will always matter. He sealed the letter in an envelope with no address and put it in a drawer. Some messages aren't meant to be delivered. Some thank yous are spoken into silence. Some debts can never be repaid. 1 year after the mission, Ryland's team gathered for their annual dinner. The same steakhouse, the same table, 1 empty chair. Lance was walking without crutches. Morrison was running again. Davis's shoulder had healed. Chen had left the army and was working as a contractor. Tessa had been promoted to staff sergeant and was training combat medics. They were all alive, all moving forward, all carrying pieces of that night in the mountains. They raised their glasses to Reeve, they told stories, they laughed, and when the dinner ended, they went their separate ways with promises to do it again next year. Raylan drove home alone through Virginia rain, thinking about a woman he'd met for 5 minutes a year ago. A woman who'd saved his life and asked for nothing in return. A woman who'd disappeared into the mountains and left behind only questions. His phone buzzed. Unknown number, text message. Thank you for remembering. Ryland pulled over, stared at the screen, typed, Is this Reeve? No response. He tried again. If this is you, I need you to know that what you did mattered. We're alive because of you. That's not nothing. The message showed as delivered, but there was no reply. He waited 20 minutes. Nothing. Ryland put the phone down and sat in the dark listening to rain hammer the windshield. Maybe it had been her. Maybe it had been someone else. Maybe it didn't matter. Some people pass through your life like weather. Brief. Intense. Gone before you can properly understand what happened. You don't get closure. You don't get answers. You just get the aftermath and the memory and the knowledge that for one moment, someone cared enough to risk everything for strangers. Raylan started the car and drove home. But the questions never stopped. 2 years after the mission, Ryland was approached by a man in civilian clothes outside a briefing room at Fort Bragg. The man was in his 50s, weathered, with the kind of eyes that had seen too much and remembered all of it. Captain Cross, the man said, walk with me. It wasn't a request. They walked through the base in silence until they reached a quiet corner near the airfield. The man stopped and turned to face him. I'm going to tell you something, and then I'm going to ask you to never speak of it again. Raylan waited. The woman who saved your team is a part of a program that doesn't officially exist. She operates in areas where conventional forces can't go, and does work that can't be acknowledged. She's one of maybe a dozen people in the world who can do what she does. And she's alive because she stays invisible. Why are you telling me this? Because you keep looking. Because you keep asking questions. Because every time you do, you create ripples that someone might notice. And if the wrong people notice, she becomes a target. I'm not trying to hurt her. I know, but intent doesn't matter. Result does. So I'm asking you, as someone who understands what she did for you, let her be a ghost. Let her disappear. Let her do her work without anyone looking over her shoulder. Ryland met the man's eyes. Is she okay? She's alive. She's operating. That's all you need to know. Can I send her a message just to say, no messages, no contact, no acknowledgement. She saved your life. Honor that by letting her stay hidden. The man walked away without waiting for a response. Ryland stood there watching planes take off and land, thinking about invisible soldiers fighting invisible wars. He thought about the empty chair at his team's annual dinners. He thought about letters written but never sent. He thought about text messages from unknown numbers that might have been her or might have been wishful thinking. He went home and told his wife he was done looking. She said she was proud of him. He almost believed it himself. 3 years after the mission, Reland was promoted to major and given a training command. No more deployments, no more combat, just teaching the next generation how to survive the impossible. He was good at it. His students respected him. His superiors valued him. His family was stable. His nightmares had faded to occasional bad dreams. Life had moved on. But every year, his team gathered for dinner. Every year, they set one empty chair. Every year, they remembered. And every year, Rylan wondered if she was out there somewhere, if she was alive, if she ever thought about the 6 soldiers she'd saved in the fog and the mountains. 4 years after the mission, the answer came in a way he never expected. Rylan was at the base going through personnel files when he saw a name he recognized. Not Reeve, but someone from that night. An enemy combatant who'd been captured during a separate operation and was now being processed for intelligence debriefing. The report mentioned the engagement in the mountains. The ambush, the mysterious sniper who decimated their assault force. Rylan pulled the file and read every word. According to the captured soldier, the sniper had been a legend among enemy forces in that region. A ghost who appeared without warning and vanished without trace. They called her different names: the Silent One, the Shadow, the Angel of Death. No one knew who she was or where she came from. She struck without warning and left no survivors to describe her. The soldier said she'd been operating in that area for at least 18 months before Rylan's team had been ambushed. Said she'd killed over 60 enemy combatants. Said there were standing orders to capture or kill her on sight. Said no one had ever come close. The file included intercepted communications, radio chatter, panicked reports from units that had encountered her. All of it painted the same picture: a lone operator with impossible skills conducting a private war against enemy forces. Rylan closed the file and sat back in his chair. She hadn't just saved his team as a one-time act of heroism. She'd been hunting, systematically clearing enemy forces from that entire mountain region. His team's distress beacon had just happened to reach her while she was already in the area, already at work. They'd been saved by someone who was waging a one-woman war. The question was, why? What mission justified that level of risk? What objective was worth spending 18 months alone in hostile territory? Rylan would never know, but he understood something now that he hadn't before. She wasn't a hero who'd appeared to save them and then vanished. She was a hunter who'd been there all along. They just happened to be in her territory when they needed help. That made it somehow more impressive and more terrifying. 5 years after the mission, Rylan received a package at his office. No return address, just his name and rank, and a postmark from somewhere in Eastern Europe. Inside was a single photograph. It showed a mountain ridge at dawn, fog rolling through valleys. A lone figure silhouetted against the rising sun, rifle slung over one shoulder, walking away from the camera. On the back, written in careful handwriting, "Still walking, still breathing. Thank you for remembering." Rylan stared at the photograph for a long time. She was alive. She was still out there, still operating, still fighting whatever war she'd committed herself to. He put the photograph in a frame and placed it on his desk where he could see it every day. When people asked who it was, he said it was a landscape shot from a deployment. Nobody questioned it. His team's annual dinner that year was different. Rylan brought the photograph. He didn't explain where it came from or how he'd gotten it. He just passed it around the table and watched as recognition dawned on each face. "She's alive," Lance said quietly. "Yeah," Rylan said. "She's alive." Tessa touched the frame gently. "She remembered us. We remembered her. I think that matters." They set the empty chair like always, but this year it felt less like mourning and more like acknowledgement. A place saved for someone who couldn't be there but was still with them somehow. The photograph stayed on Rylan's desk for years, a reminder that some people fight battles no one will ever know about. Some warriors operate in shadows and silence. Some heroes never get parades or medals or recognition. They just keep walking, keep breathing, keep fighting. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they save your life and then disappear back into the mountains, leaving behind only questions and gratitude and the knowledge that somewhere out there, someone is still standing watch. Rylan never tried to find her again. But he never forgot her either. Some debts are paid with memory. Some thank yous are carried in silence. Some stories don't get endings. They just keep going, out of sight, in the places where normal soldiers fear to tread. 6 years after the mission, Rylan was sitting in his office when his phone rang. Unknown number. He'd learned to expect them, learned not to hope too much. "Major Cross," he answered. Silence. Then, "I heard you've been promoted." Her voice, quiet, calm, unmistakable. Rylan's hand tightened on the phone. "Reeve." "I saw the photograph, the one I sent. You kept it." "Of course I kept it. How did you—" "I have my ways. I wanted to thank you for remembering, for keeping that chair empty, for not trying to find me after I asked you to stop. I wanted to, every day. I know, that's why I'm calling. To tell you that what you did, letting me stay hidden, It mattered. It kept me alive, kept me operational. Let me finish what I started. Is it finished? A pause. The mission I was on when I found you? Yes, that's done. I'm somewhere else now. Different work. Still necessary, still quiet. Are you safe? Safe is relative. I'm alive. I'm careful. That's the best I can offer. Rylan closed his eyes. I need you to know something. What you did, saving my team, it changed everything. Lance got married, had a daughter. Morrison runs marathons. Davis is teaching at West Point. Chen's happy. Tessa saved 3 lives last year because she learned from you how to stay calm under pressure. And me, I get to go home to my family every night because you decided 6 strangers were worth saving. You were worth saving. How did you know? Your beacon. The way you stayed calm when everything was falling apart. The way you protected your team even when you had nothing left. That kind of leadership. It deserved a chance to continue. I wish I could have done something for you. You did. You let me disappear. That was the greatest gift you could have given me. Reelan heard something in the background. Voices. Movement. She was somewhere public, somewhere exposed. I have to go, she said. Wait, will I hear from you again? Maybe. Maybe not. But I wanted you to know that photograph I sent, there's another one. Being delivered to your home. Same mountain, different angle. Look at the rocks on the right side. The line went dead. Ryland sat there for a moment, then called his wife. Did a package arrive today? Yes, photography. I put it on your desk in the study. Who sends you landscape shots? It's complicated. Can you look at it? Tell me what you see? He heard her footsteps. A pause. Then, it's beautiful. Dawn in the mountains. Fog. Very peaceful. Why? Look at the rocks on the right side. What do you see? Another pause. Oh, Rylan, there are 6 stones. Stacked, like a cairn, and on top, is that a bullet casing? Rylan closed his eyes. A memorial. She'd built them a memorial in the mountains where she'd saved them. Yeah, he said quietly. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. That night, Rylan showed the photograph to his team. They gathered virtually, video call, 6 faces in 6 boxes, all staring at the same image. 6 stones, 1 bullet casing, a monument to the night they should have died. She built that for us, Morrison said. His voice was thick. She remembers too, Tessa added. They sat in silence, 6 survivors staring at a photograph of rocks and fog and dawn, understanding that somewhere in the world, a woman they barely knew had taken the time to stack stones and leave a memorial for people she'd saved and never expected to see again. It was more than most heroes got. It was everything they needed. 7 years after the mission, Rylan retired from the army. His wife threw him a party. His team attended. They set 1 empty chair. Late in the evening, after most guests had left, Rylan stepped outside for air. The night was clear, stars bright. He thought about mountains and fog and impossible shots. His phone buzzed. Text message. Unknown number. Congratulations on retirement. You earned it. May your watch be ended and your nights be peaceful. Rylan smiled. Typed, thank you for everything. Stay safe out there. The response came quickly. Always. Keep that chair empty. I might surprise you one day. I'll believe it when I see it. Good. Belief should be earned. Then, the work continues, the watch goes on. But knowing you're out there, all of you, living the lives I helped save, it makes the dark nights easier. Reelan's throat tightened. We remember. Every year, every dinner. That won't change. I know. That's why I'm still fighting. No more messages came that night, or the next, or the year after that. But every year, Rylan's team gathered. Every year, they set 1 empty chair. Every year, they told the story to their families, their friends, anyone who would listen. The story of a woman who appeared from darkness and changed everything. Who saved 6 lives and asked for nothing. Who disappeared into mountains and became a legend whispered by people who'd never see her face. Some heroes wear uniforms. Some carry flags. Some have names everyone knows. And some are ghosts who walk through battlefields, clearing the way for others to survive, never staying long enough for thanks, never asking for recognition, never stopping their watch. Reelan carried 2 photographs for the rest of his life. A silhouette walking into dawn. 6 stones stacked with care. Reminders that somewhere in the world someone was still fighting, still breathing, still walking. And that was enough. 10 years after the mountains, Rylan got the call that changed everything. It came at 3 a.m. Unknown number. He answered on instinct, half asleep, expecting another cryptic message from a ghost who'd become part of his life through absence. Instead, he got a voice he recognized immediately. The colonel who'd debriefed him a decade ago. The one who'd told him to stop looking. The one who'd made it clear some questions had no answers. Major Cross, the colonel said. No preliminaries, no small talk. I need you to get to Fort Bragg, now. Don't tell anyone where you're going or why. Don't call your team, just get on a plane. Raylan sat up. His wife stirred beside him. What's happening? I can't explain over the phone, but it concerns the asset who saved your team in the mountains. She needs help, and you're the only person who can provide it. Raylan's blood went cold. Is she hurt? Not yet, but she will be if we don't move fast. I'm sending a car. Be ready in 20 minutes. The line went dead. Rylan was dressed in 15. His wife watched him with worried eyes as he threw clothes into a bag. Is this about her? She asked quietly. The woman from the mountains? I don't know, maybe. Be careful, Rylan. Always am. He kissed her and left. The car was waiting outside. Black SUV, tinted windows. Driver who didn't speak. They drove through empty streets to a private airfield where a military transport was already spooling up its engines. 6 hours later, Rylan was sitting in a secure facility at Fort Bragg across from the colonel and two people he didn't recognize. One was a woman in her 40s with the bearing of someone who'd spent her life in intelligence work. The other was a younger man, maybe 30, with the kind of eyes that had seen combat and hadn't looked away. The colonel got straight to business. What I'm about to tell you is classified at a level that doesn't have a name. If you repeat any of this, you'll spend the rest of your life in a cell. Are we clear? Clear, Rylan said. The woman who saved your team, we're going to call her Reeve because that's the only name you know, has been operating continuously for the past 12 years in some of the worst territories on the planet. She's conducted over 300 confirmed eliminations of high-value targets. She's disrupted weapons networks, dismantled trafficking operations, and prevented at least 4 major terrorist attacks that the public will never know about. The intelligence officer leaned forward. She's also completely off the grid. No official support, no backup, no extraction protocol. She operates on her own authority with resources we can barely track. Why? Rylan asked. Because she's hunting someone, the young man said. Has been for 12 years, someone who can't be touched through official channels. Someone who's caused more death and suffering than most warlords combined. The colonel pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. Inside were photographs, surveillance images, intelligence reports. All of them centered on one man. Rylan studied the face. Late 50s, distinguished. The kind of man who looked like he belonged at corporate boardrooms and diplomatic functions. Not battlefields. Viktor Korsakov, the colonel said. Arms dealer. Human trafficker. War profiteer. He's directly responsible for conflicts in 7 countries and indirectly responsible for the deaths of an estimated 50,000 people. He supplies weapons to terrorist organizations, rebel groups, and anyone else with money and bad intentions. And you can't touch him because? Because he has diplomatic cover in 3 countries, protection from intelligence agencies who use his services, and enough money to buy politicians and judges. Every time we get close, he vanishes. Every witness disappears. Every case falls apart. The intelligence officer took over. Reva's been hunting him since she left military service. We don't know why. We don't know what her personal stake is, but she's gotten closer to him than anyone else. She's dismantled his networks piece by piece, killed his lieutenants, destroyed his supply lines, made it personal. And now? Rylan asked. Now she's found him. He's at a private compound in the Balkans, heavily defended, professional security, but she's going to hit it anyway, alone, without support. And if she does, she's going to die. The room went quiet. Rylan looked at the photographs again, studied the compound, counted the guards, analyzed the defenses. It was a fortress. Hitting it solo was suicide. Why are you telling me this? The colonel met his eyes. Because she won't accept help from us. She doesn't trust official channels, doesn't trust government support, but she might trust you. You're the only person outside this world who knows she exists, the only one she's stayed in contact with, even peripherally. You want me to convince her not to go. I want you to convince her to let us help. We can provide assets, intelligence, extraction. We can make this a sanctioned operation instead of a suicide mission. And if she says no, then we lose the best operator we've ever had, and Korsakov keeps killing people. Rylan sat back. 10 years ago, a woman he didn't know had saved his life, had asked for nothing, had disappeared into the mountains and left him with questions and gratitude. Now she needed something from him. How do I contact her? The young man slid a phone across the table. This is a secure sat phone. She'll call you on it within the next 12 hours. When she does, you talk to her. You tell her we know what she's planning. You tell her we want to help. And if she hangs up, then we tried. The colonel stood. You have a room here, food, whatever you need. When that phone rings, you answer. Understand? Ryland picked up the phone. Yeah, I understand. They left him alone in a room with concrete walls and fluorescent lights. The phone sat on the table in front of him like an unexploded bomb. Ryland stared at it for 2 hours before it rang. He answered immediately. Hello, Ryland. Her voice, calm, unsurprised, like she'd been expecting this. Reeve, they told you. They told me you're planning something that's going to get you killed. A soft laugh. They're probably right. Then don't do it. I have to. Why? Why is Korsakov worth dying for? Silence. Long enough that Ryland thought she might hang up. Then, because he killed someone I loved, and because if I don't stop him, he'll kill a lot more people who deserve better. Let them help you. The colonel, the intelligence team, they can support this. Make it official. Give you backup. I've spent 12 years staying alive by staying invisible. The moment I accept official support, I become visible, traceable, compromised, and Korsakov will vanish again. You can't take that compound alone. I've taken worse. Not like this. I've seen the intelligence. It's a fortress. You'll be outnumbered 20-1. Even you can't... Rylan. Her voice was gentle. I know what I'm doing. I've been planning this for 3 years. I have contingencies, escape routes. I'm not walking in blind. But you are walking in alone, and that's the problem. It's also the advantage. One person can move in ways a team can't. One person doesn't have to coordinate, doesn't have to worry about someone else making a mistake. I've survived this long because I work alone. Ryland closed his eyes. I can't watch you die. You won't, because you're not going to be there. Then let someone else be there. Let them send operators, people who know what they're doing, people who can watch your back. And risk them dying for my personal vendetta? No, this is my fight, my choice, my risk. It's not just your fight anymore. You saved 6 people 10 years ago. We've been carrying that with us ever since. You think we're just going to sit back and let you throw your life away? What would you have me do? Accept help. Trust that there are people who want to see you succeed, who want to see you survive. Another pause. He could hear her breathing, could imagine her somewhere remote, satellite phone pressed to her ear, calculating odds and weighing options. If I accept help, she said slowly, it has to be on my terms. My plan, my rules. I don't answer to anyone. I don't compromise my approach. They provide support, not command. I'll tell them. And Rylan? If this goes wrong, if I don't make it out, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Tell your team the truth. All of it. Why I was in those mountains. What I've been doing for the past 12 years. They deserve to know that saving them wasn't random chance. It was part of something bigger. You can tell them yourself after you survive this. Maybe. But just in case, promise me. Ryland's throat tightened. I promise. Thank you for everything, for remembering, for keeping that chair empty, for not trying to find me when I asked you to stop. You gave me the space to finish this. That matters. Reeve, I have to go. They'll contact you with the details. If I need extraction, you'll know. The line went dead. Ryland sat there holding the phone, feeling like he'd just had a conversation with someone preparing to die. He found the colonel in a situation room 3 floors down, surrounded by monitors and personnel coordinating something classified. She'll accept limited support, Ryland said, on her terms. Her plan. You provide assets, but she maintains operational control. The colonel nodded. We can work with that. What else? She's doing this whether you help or not, so you might as well help. Agreed. We move in 48 hours. You're coming with us. What? You're the only person she'll communicate with directly. We need you on site to coordinate. You won't be in the compound. You'll be at the Tactical Operations Center, but you'll be the voice she hears on the radio. Ryland wanted to argue, wanted to say he was retired, that he'd left this life behind, that his family needed him home. But a woman who'd saved his life was walking into hell, and if there was any chance his voice on the other end of a radio could help her survive, he couldn't say no. When do we leave? Tomorrow night. Get some rest. You're going to need it. Ryland didn't rest. He spent the night reviewing intelligence reports, studying the compound layout, memorizing every detail that might matter. The place was a maze of security. Motion sensors, guard towers, kill zones, professional security contractors who'd been trained by the best. Against all that, one woman with a rifle and 12 years of hunting experience. The odds were terrible. But Reeve had survived worse, Rylan had to believe that. The next evening, he was on a transport plane heading east. The team was small, 8 operators from units that didn't officially exist, the intelligence officer from the briefing, the young man who'd helped coordinate, and Rylan, sitting in the back trying to understand how he'd gone from retired military to coordinating a black operation in 48 hours. They landed at a forward operating base that wasn't on any map. From there, helicopters took them to a staging area 10 kilometers from Korsakov's compound. By the time they arrived, Reeve was already in position. Rylan put on a headset and keyed the secure channel. "Reeve, this is Viper 6, do you copy?" Static. Then, "Copy Viper 6, good to hear your voice. You're clear to proceed on your timeline. We have assets in position for support and extraction. 8 operators standing by. Medical on standby. Satellite coverage. You're not alone on this." "Understood. Beginning approach now." On the monitors in front of Rylan, thermal imaging showed a single figure moving through the darkness toward the compound. Slow, methodical, professional. The intelligence officer leaned over his shoulder. "She's using the drainage culvert on the east side. Smart. That's the one blind spot in their coverage." Rylan watched Reeve navigate through terrain that should have been impossible to cross silently. She moved like water, flowing around obstacles, never hesitating, never stopping. "She's through the outer perimeter," one of the operators said. "Guards haven't noticed." "How is that possible, Key?" another asked. "Because she's that good," Rylan said quietly. For 20 minutes, Reeve moved through the compound, avoiding patrols, staying in shadows, working her way toward the central building where intelligence suggested Korsakov was spending the night. Then everything went wrong. A guard appeared around a corner at exactly the wrong moment. Reeve dropped him with a suppressed shot, but not before he triggered a panic button on his vest. Alarms screamed through the night. "She's compromised," the intelligence officer said. 20-plus hostiles converging on her position. Rylan keyed the radio. "Reeve, you're blown. Fall back to extraction point Alpha." "Negative. Target is here. I'm not leaving without him." "You're outnumbered and exposed. You need to—" "I'm finishing this. Stand by." On the thermal imaging, Rylan watched her move. Not retreating, advancing, straight toward the central building even as guards poured out of barracks and security posts. She was going to get herself killed. "Get our operators moving," Rylan ordered. "Provide suppressing fire and create an escape corridor. Do it now." The team commander hesitated. "Sir, those aren't our orders." "I'm making them our orders. Move." 8 operators deployed. They hit the compound from 3 sides, drawing fire, creating chaos. Professional soldiers doing professional work. But they were fighting a defensive action, trying to give Reeve space to work. On the monitors, Rylan watched her enter the central building. 3 guards inside. She dropped them in 6 seconds. Then she was moving upstairs, clearing rooms, hunting. "Second floor cleared," she reported. Her voice was calm, like she was commenting on the weather, moving to 3rd floor. "Reeve, you have 40-plus hostiles in that compound now. Our operators can't hold them forever. You need to finish and extract." "Working on it." Gunfire erupted on the 3rd floor. Reeve's voice came back, slightly breathless. "Contact, 5 guards. Korsakov is barricaded in the master suite. Reinforced door. Going to need a minute." "You don't have a minute." "Then I'll be fast." Rylan watched helplessly as thermal signatures swarmed the building. The operators outside were doing their job, but they couldn't hold forever. Eventually, numbers would overwhelm skill. "Charges set," Reeve said. "Breaching in 3, 2, 1. The explosion was small, controlled, just enough to blow the door. Then Reeve was inside. 15 seconds of silence, then, "Target secured. Korskov is down. Extracting now." "Negative," Rylan said. "You're surrounded. The building is cut off. You need to—" "I know what I'm doing. Trust me." She emerged from the master suite, and instead of going down the stairs, she went up. To the roof, where there was nothing but a 40-foot drop to concrete. "Reeve, what are you doing?" "Improvising. Stand by." On the monitors, Rylan saw her set something on the roof. Then she was moving to the edge. The operators outside were screaming contact reports. The guards were closing in. Reeve jumped, but not down. Across, to an adjacent building 20 feet away. She hit the roof hard, rolled, came up running. Up. Behind her, the device she'd left behind detonated. Smoke grenades and flashbangs that created a wall of confusion. She was across 2 more buildings before the guards realized she wasn't in the main structure anymore. "Heading to extraction point Bravo," she said. "ETA, 2 minutes. Our operators are pulling back to cover you." "Negative. Tell them to fall back to their own extraction. I'll make my own way out." "Reeve, Rylan, trust me." He did. He didn't have much choice. The next 2 minutes were the longest of his life. On the monitors, he watched her navigate rooftops and alleyways, watched her drop 3 guards who got too close, watched her disappear into the darkness beyond the compound walls. Then silence. Reeve, report. Nothing. Reeve, do you copy? Static. Damn it, Reeve, talk to me. More static. Then faint. I'm clear. 2 clicks east of the compound, minor injuries, nothing critical. Ryland sagged in his chair. Around him, the Tactical Operations Center erupted in controlled celebration. The operators were all clear. Reeve was clear. Mission successful. We're sending a bird for you, Ryland said. Give us your exact coordinates. Negative. I'll make my own way to the rendezvous point. Maintain radio silence from here. Too many people listening. Reeve, thank you, Ryland, for trusting me, for helping when I needed it, for keeping your promise all these years. You're welcome. Now get to safety so we can... The transmission cut off. Ryland sat there staring at the radio. The intelligence officer put a hand on his shoulder. She did it, the woman said. 12 years of hunting, and she actually did it. Yeah, Ryland said quietly. She did. 24 hours later, Ryland was back at Fort Bragg, sitting across from the colonel again. Korsakov's death has been reported as a heart attack, the colonel said. The compound security attributed the attack to a rival faction. No mention of Reeve, no mention of our involvement. Good. She's disappeared again, completely off the grid. We tried to track her after she left the extraction zone, but she vanished. It's like she never existed. That's how she wants it. The colonel nodded. Your team's been asking questions. They know something happened. What are you going to tell them? Ryland thought about his promise, about telling them the truth, about explaining why Reeve had been in those mountains 10 years ago. I'm going to tell them everything, he said. She asked me to. If she didn't make it, I was supposed to explain. Since she did make it, I think they still deserve to know. That's your call. But understand, anything you tell them stays with them. This can't go beyond your team. It won't. Ryland flew home that night. He called his team and scheduled an emergency meeting. Not their annual dinner, something different, something important. They gathered at Tessa's apartment 3 days later. All 6 of them. Confused. Concerned. Wondering what was urgent enough to break their routine. Ryland told them everything. He told them about Reeve's 12-year hunt, about Korsakov, about the compound assault and the mission that had finally ended. He told them that the woman who'd saved them in the mountains hadn't been there by accident. She'd been hunting, and their distress beacon had interrupted a war she'd been fighting alone. When he finished, the room was silent. Lance was the first to speak. She spent 12 years hunting one man? Yeah. Why? I don't know. She wouldn't say. But it was personal. Someone she loved died because of him. Morrison shook his head. 12 years. Alone. That's insane, Chen finished. That's completely insane. Maybe, Ryland said. But she did it. She actually did it. Tessa was staring at the photograph on the wall. The one of 6 stones stacked with care. We were part of something bigger. We were. She saved us because she was already there, already fighting. Yeah. And then she went back to hunting. For another 10 years. Until she finally found him. Davis looked pale. Is she okay? After all that? I don't know. She disappeared again, but she's alive. She completed her mission. That's all I can tell you. They sat in silence processing it, understanding that the woman they'd been honoring for 10 years was even more remarkable than they'd thought. Not just a hero who'd appeared to save them, a hunter who'd dedicated her life to stopping someone evil, who'd sacrificed a normal life, relationships, comfort, safety, everything, to pursue justice that couldn't be found through official channels. We need to do something, Lance said finally. Something more than just the empty chair. Like what? I don't know. Something that honors what she did. All of it. Not just saving us, but everything else. They talked for hours, proposed ideas, discarded them, struggled to find something appropriate for someone who'd explicitly asked not to be remembered publicly. Finally, Tessa had an idea. We start a scholarship, she said, for women in military service, especially those going into special operations or intelligence. We fund it anonymously. We don't explain why. We just create opportunities for women who want to walk the path she walked. She'd hate that, Chen said. Probably, Tessa agreed. But she'd also understand it. We're not honoring her. We're honoring what she represents. The idea that one person, operating alone, can make a difference. They voted unanimously. Within 6 months, they'd established the Silent Watch Scholarship Fund. Anonymous donors. No publicity. Just quiet support for women who wanted to serve in the most demanding roles the military offered. The first scholarship was awarded a year later, to a young woman from Montana who wanted to be a sniper. She'd grown up hunting in the mountains and had the kind of eyes that could spot targets at impossible ranges. When she received the scholarship, she sent a thank you letter to the anonymous donors. It said, "I don't know who you are or why you chose me, but I promise I won't waste this opportunity. I'll be the best I can be. I'll serve with honor. And maybe one day, I'll help someone the way you've helped me." Rylan read that letter to his team at their annual dinner. They raised their glasses to the empty chair. And somewhere in the world, a woman named Reeve was alive, breathing, free of the hunt that had defined her for 12 years. They would never know what she did next. Never know if she found peace or just found another mission. Never know if she thought about the 6 soldiers she'd saved or if they were just one night among hundreds of nights spent in the darkness. But they remembered. Every year, every dinner, every scholarship awarded. They remembered that some people fight battles no one will ever know about. That some warriors spend their lives in the shadows, pursuing justice that can't be found in courtrooms or congressional hearings. That some heroes never get parades or medals or recognition. They just get the satisfaction of completing their mission and walking away alive. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they save your life along the way. 15 years after the mountains, Rylan received one final message. Unknown number. Text message. The watch has ended. The hunt is over. Time to rest. Thank you for keeping the faith. Thank you for remembering. And thank you for the scholarship. She'll be everything I couldn't be. Visible, acknowledged, celebrated. That's how it should be. Rylan stared at the message for a long time. Then he typed, "You'll always have a chair at our table. Always." The response came immediately. "I know, that's why I can finally stop." No more messages came after that. But Rylan understood. Reeve had spent 12 years hunting, had spent another 3 recovering. Had finally found whatever she'd been looking for. Peace, closure, maybe just the simple freedom to stop running and start living. The empty chair remained at every dinner, but now it felt less like a memorial and more like a promise. That if she ever wanted to stop being invisible, if she ever wanted to sit with the people whose lives she'd changed, the invitation was standing. She never came, but the chair stayed empty, and the scholarship kept helping young women walk the path she'd walked. And 6 soldiers who should have died in the mountains kept living, kept remembering, kept honoring the ghost who'd refused to let them become casualties. Some stories don't end, they just fade into legend, into whispers, into the kind of truth that gets passed down from one generation to the next with reverence and wonder. This was one of those stories, and it lived on in the lives it had saved and the lives it continued to save. Forever. 20 years after the mountains, the call came on a Tuesday afternoon while Rylan was teaching his grandson how to fish. The number wasn't unknown this time. It was the colonel, retired now, like Rylan, but still connected to the world they'd both left behind. They talked maybe twice a year, birthday calls, the occasional check-in. Nothing urgent. This felt urgent. "Turn on the news," the colonel said without preamble. Rylan pulled out his phone and opened a news app. The headline hit him like a punch to the chest. "Mysterious sniper saves hostages in Eastern Europe. Authorities baffled." Below it, grainy footage from someone's phone. A warehouse, gunfire. Then silence. Then hostages stumbling out alive while bodies of their captors lay scattered in impossible shooting positions. "That's her," Rylan said quietly. "Yeah, that's her. I thought she was done. She said the watch was ended." "So did I, but apparently something changed, and Rylan. This time she didn't disappear. Local authorities have security footage. A witness got a clear look at her face. Within 48 hours, someone's going to identify her." Rylan's stomach dropped. 20 years of staying invisible, and one mission had blown her cover. "What do we do?" "I'm working on containment, but I need to know, is your team still meeting?" "Every year. Next dinner is in 2 weeks. Move it up. Tomorrow if possible. And tell them to be ready. Because if her identity goes public, every intelligence agency in the world is going to want to know who she is and who she's worked for. That trail leads back to you, to your team, to that night in the mountains. They'll protect her. I know they will. But they need to be prepared for what's coming." The colonel hung up. Rylan made 5 calls in the next 10 minutes. By evening, his team was converging on his house from 3 different states. Lance drove 8 hours straight. Morrison caught the last flight out of Denver. Tessa left a training class mid-session. Chen canceled client meetings. Davis rescheduled a lecture at West Point. By midnight, they were all sitting in Rylan's living room, staring at the news footage playing on loop. "That's her," Tessa said. She'd watched the clip 15 times, analyzing every movement. "The way she moves. The shot placement. That's absolutely her." 20 years, Lance said. 20 years of staying hidden and she blows it saving hostages? She didn't blow anything, Morrison countered. She made a choice. People were going to die. She stopped it, same as she did for us. But now everyone's looking for her, Chen said. Every intelligence agency, every government, they'll want to know who she is, who trained her, who's been protecting her. Davis leaned forward. And that search leads to us, to Rylan, to the operation that saved us, to the colonel who coordinated support for her final mission against Korsakov. So what do we do? Lance asked. Rylan had been thinking about that since the colonel's call. We protect her, same as she protected us. We create so much noise that the truth gets buried in conspiracy theories and dead ends. How? We tell part of the story, not all of it, just enough to satisfy curiosity without exposing her. Tessa frowned. What part? The mountains, the ambush, the mysterious sniper who saved us. We've kept that quiet for 20 years. Now we go public with it. We give interviews, we tell the story. We make it about us being saved, not about who saved us. That still points toward her, Chen said. But it points toward a myth, a legend, a ghost story that may or may not be true. We make it so big, so dramatic, that the truth gets lost in the noise. And while everyone's chasing the story we're telling, she has time to disappear again. Morrison nodded slowly. Create a smokescreen. Exactly. It might work, Davis said. Journalists love a good mystery. Give them one that's 20 years old with just enough detail to seem credible, but not enough to actually track anything. They'll chase their tails for months. And Reeve? Rylan pulled out his phone, the secure number he'd had for 10 years, rarely used but always available. He typed a message. We saw the news. We're running interference. Stay hidden. We've got you. He sent it not expecting a response. Reeve had been silent for years. If she was in trouble, she probably couldn't risk communication. His phone buzzed 30 seconds later. Don't. I knew the risks. Let it play out. Rylan stared at the screen. The team crowded around to read it. She doesn't want our help, Lance said. Too bad, Rylan replied. She's getting it anyway. He typed, You didn't let us die in the mountains when we told you to run. We're not letting you burn now. Give us 48 hours, then do whatever you want. The response took longer this time, 48 hours. Then I handle it my way. Rylan looked at his team. We have 2 days to bury the truth so deep, no one will ever find it. They worked through the night. By dawn, they had a plan. First, they contacted a journalist they trusted, someone who'd covered military stories with integrity and discretion. They offered an exclusive, the true story of Viper Recon's miraculous survival 20 years ago, complete with first-hand accounts and never-before-released details. The journalist jumped on it. Second, they coordinated with the colonel. He had contacts in intelligence who could muddy the waters, create false trails, make sure any investigation into the Eastern European incident ran into dead ends and classified walls. Third, they leveraged the Silent Watch Scholarship Fund. 20 years of helping women in military service had created a network of grateful recipients. Some were now in positions of influence. They started making noise about the incident being a government operation, a black program, something official that needed to stay classified. By the end of the first day, 3 different narratives were circulating. 1. The Eastern European incident was a sanctioned special operations mission that accidentally became public. 2. It was a vigilante with military training, possibly connected to an old hostage rescue from 20 years ago. 3. It was a complete fabrication, edited footage from a movie set that went viral. None of them were entirely true. All of them were plausible enough to chase. The second day, Rylan did something he'd sworn he'd never do. He called a press conference. His team sat beside him at a table in a hotel conference room facing 24 journalists and cameras. Rylan wore his old uniform, medals he'd earned over 25 years of service. The others did the same. They looked like what they were, decorated soldiers with stories to tell. Rylan spoke first. 20 years ago, my team was ambushed in a mountain region I'm not authorized to name. We were outnumbered, outgunned, and out of time. We called for help that we didn't think would come. What happened next has been classified until recently, but given the current speculation about military snipers, we've been authorized to share our experience. He told the story. The ambush, the beacon, the ghost who appeared and saved them. He kept it vague enough to protect operational security, but detailed enough to sound authentic. We never learned her name, Rylan said, which was technically true. Reeve was a call sign, not a name. We never saw her face clearly, but we know she was American military, highly trained and operating in that region for reasons we weren't cleared to know. A journalist raised her hand. Do you believe the sniper from the Eastern European incident is the same person who saved you? I have no way of knowing, Rylan said truthfully. But if it is, then I hope she knows that 6 people are alive today because of her, and we'd do anything to protect her the way she protected us. Another journalist. Is she still active military? Again, I don't know. We were extracted separately. We never saw her after that night. For all we know, she retired years ago. But you've thought about her. Reeland smiled. Every single day for 20 years. The press conference lasted 90 minutes. By the time it ended, the story had exploded across news networks and social media. The video from Eastern Europe was being analyzed frame by frame. Experts were weighing in. Former military personnel were sharing their own stories of mysterious operators appearing at crucial moments. The truth was drowning in speculation. That night, Ryland's phone rang. The colonel. Well done, he said. You've created enough chaos that any real investigation is going to get lost in the noise. Intelligence agencies are already fighting over jurisdiction. Half of them think it's their operation. The other half think it's a rival agency. Nobody's looking for a lone operator anymore. And Reeve? As far as I can tell, she's already gone. Disappeared from Eastern Europe before authorities could respond. No trace, no trail, like she was never there. Good. Rylan? This bought her time. But it won't last forever. Eventually someone's going to connect the dots. When they do, we'll be ready. The colonel was quiet for a moment. You're a good man. She chose well when she decided to save you. I think she just heard a beacon and responded. I don't think she knew who we were. Maybe. Or maybe she knew exactly what kind of men would call for help only when their team was dying. Maybe she recognized something worth saving. The call ended. Ryland sat in his study looking at the 2 photographs he'd kept for 20 years. A silhouette walking into dawn. 6 stones stacked with care. Reminders of a debt that could never be repaid and a promise that would never be broken. His wife found him there at midnight. You did what you could, she said gently. I don't know if it's enough. It's what she needed. Time. Space. A chance to disappear again. You gave her that. I hope so. She kissed the top of his head. Come to bed, Rylan. The fight's over for tonight. But he couldn't sleep. He kept checking his phone, waiting for a message that didn't come. Wondering if Reeve was safe, if she'd made it out, if she was angry that they'd violated her privacy even while trying to protect her. At 3 a.m., his phone buzzed. You didn't have to do that. Rylan typed quickly. Yes, we did. You saved our lives. We don't forget debts like that. It's been 20 years. You don't owe me anything. That's not how this works. You made a choice in those mountains. You could have stayed hidden. You chose to help. Now we choose to help you. A long pause, then. The press conference was smart. Messy enough to create confusion. Clean enough to seem credible. You've learned a few things over the years. I had a good teacher. Someone who showed me that one person can change everything if they're brave enough. I'm not brave. I'm just stubborn. Same thing, sometimes. Another pause. Longer this time. Rylan thought she might have signed off. Then, I need you to know something about why I was in those mountains, why I spent 12 years hunting Korsakov. You deserve the truth. Rylan's breath caught. In 20 years, she'd never explained, never revealed the personal reason behind her crusade. You don't have to tell me. I want to. You kept your promise. You told your team the truth about my hunt. Now, I'll tell you the rest. Rylan waited. I was married once, before the military, before everything. His name was Marcus. He was a journalist. Good man. Great man. He was investigating Korsakov's weapons trafficking. Got too close. Asked too many questions. They killed him. Made it look like a car accident. But I knew the truth, and I couldn't prove it. And the authorities didn't care because Marcus was nobody important and Korsakov had protection. I'm sorry. That's when I joined the military. I trained. I learned. I became the kind of person who could do something about monsters like Korsakov. I spent 12 years hunting him because the law couldn't touch him, because the system was broken, because someone had to. And the mountains? When you found us? I was tracking one of Korsakov's weapon shipments, following a convoy through the region. When I heard your beacon, I was half a kilometer away. I could have ignored it, could have stayed focused on my mission, but I heard 6 people dying and I couldn't walk away. Marcus would have helped, so I helped. Rylan felt tears on his face. 20 years of wondering, and the answer was simpler and more profound than he'd imagined. She'd saved them because someone she loved would have done the same. Marcus would be proud of you. Maybe. Or maybe he'd be horrified at what I became, at what I did in his name. You stopped a monster. You saved lives. You gave justice to people who deserved it. That's not something to be ashamed of. I killed hundreds of people, Rylan, in the hunt, in the missions, in the years of operating alone. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who decided that some people deserve to die and made it happen. You're someone who refused to let evil go unpunished. In my book, that makes you a hero. The conversation paused. Rylan could imagine her sitting somewhere remote, satellite phone in hand, wrestling with 20 years of choices and their consequences. The hostages in Eastern Europe. I shouldn't have intervened. I was retired. Done. But I saw it happening and I couldn't walk away. Same problem as always. I can't ignore people dying when I have the skill to stop it. Then don't retire. Keep helping. Keep making a difference. I'm getting old, Rylan. Slower. My hands shake sometimes. My eyes aren't what they were. Eventually, I'm going to make a mistake and it's going to get me killed. Or you could work with people instead of alone. Accept support. Let others watch your back. We tried that. It worked once. Doesn't mean it'll work again. It worked because you let it. Because you trusted that we wanted to help. That trust is still there. The network is still there. The Silent Watch Scholarship has created a whole generation of women who've walked the path you walked. Some of them would probably jump at the chance to work with you. I work alone. You don't have to anymore. Long silence. So long that Rylan thought he'd pushed too hard. Then, I'll think about it. That's all I ask. Thank you. For the press conference, for the chaos, for buying me time, for keeping the faith after all these years. Thank you for saving my life, for giving me 20 more years with my family, for showing me what courage really looks like. Rylan? Yeah? That empty chair at your dinners. Keep it. I like knowing it's there. But don't expect me to fill it. I'm not good at sitting still. It'll be there as long as we are. Good. The conversation ended there. No goodbye, no promises. Just an understanding between two soldiers who'd seen different sides of the same war. Rylan sat in the darkness thinking about everything that had been said and everything that remained unspoken. Reeve had revealed more in that conversation than she had in 20 years of sporadic contact. The truth about Marcus. The reason for her crusade. The acknowledgement that she was getting older, slower, more vulnerable. It felt like goodbye. But Rylan had learned not to assume anything with Reeve. She'd surprised him too many times. 3 weeks later, the news cycle had moved on. The Eastern European incident was filed away as unresolved with competing theories, but no definitive answers. Intelligence agencies had stopped fighting over jurisdiction. The grainy footage was still analyzed occasionally by internet sleuths, but without new information, the story had lost its urgency. Reeve had disappeared successfully. Again. Rylan's team met for their annual dinner as planned. Same restaurant, same table, one empty chair, but this year felt different. Lighter, somehow. Like a weight had been lifted. She told you about her husband, Tessa said. It wasn't a question. She'd always been perceptive. Yeah, she told me. Marcus, the journalist. Rylan looked at her sharply. How did you know his name? Because I did some digging after the press conference. Found old articles about a journalist killed in a car accident 23 years ago. Marcus Reeves, investigative reporter, was working on a story about international weapons trafficking when he died. The circumstances were suspicious, but never investigated. Reeves, Rylan said slowly. Her call sign was Reeve. I always thought it was random. It was his name, Tessa said quietly. She took his name, carried it with her, made it her identity while she hunted the people who killed him. The table went silent. 23 years, Morrison finally said. 12 hunting, another 11 recovering and trying to retire. And then Eastern Europe happened and she couldn't walk away. She's wired differently than us, Chen said. We served, we fought, we came home. She never really came home. She just moved from one mission to the next. Maybe that's changing, Rylan said. He told them about the conversation, about Reeve acknowledging her limitations, about the possibility of working with others instead of alone. You think she'll actually do it? Lance asked. I don't know, but I think she's considering it, and that's more than she would have done 5 years ago. Davis raised his glass. To Reeve. May she find whatever peace looks like for someone who spent 2 decades at war. They drank to that. All of them. The dinner continued with the usual reminiscences and updates. Lance's daughter was applying to medical school. Morrison had started a foundation for wounded veterans. Davis was writing a book about leadership under pressure. Chen's consulting business was thriving. Tessa had been promoted to sergeant major and was running advanced combat medical training. They were living full lives, building legacies, making the most of the years they'd been given, all because one woman had decided they were worth saving. As the evening wound down and they prepared to leave, Rylan noticed something. A woman sitting alone at the bar, small frame, dark hair, watching them in the reflection of the mirror behind the bottles. Their eyes met in the glass. She smiled, just slightly. Then she turned and walked out of the restaurant. Rylan was on his feet immediately, following, but by the time he reached the street, she was gone, vanished into the crowd like smoke. He stood there searching faces, knowing it was pointless. If she didn't want to be found, she wouldn't be found. Tessa appeared at his shoulder. Was that her? I think so. She came, after all these years. She didn't sit down, didn't introduce herself, just watched from a distance. Maybe that's all she needed, to see that we're okay, to confirm that saving us mattered. Or maybe she just wanted to see the people who keep an empty chair for someone who doesn't deserve it. She deserves it, Tessa said firmly. She deserves that, and a lot more. They went back inside. The team was gathered around the empty chair, talking quietly among themselves. When Ryland told them what he'd seen, the conversation stopped. She was here, Lance said wonderingly. After 20 years, she actually came. She didn't stay, Morrison pointed out. She didn't have to, Davis said. She saw what she needed to see, that we remember, that we care, that the chair stays empty because she matters. Chen nodded. 20 years of wondering who she is, and we still don't really know, just a call sign and a story. Maybe that's enough, Ryland said. Maybe some people are meant to be legends instead of friends, myths instead of colleagues. The woman who saved us doesn't need to be real, she just needs to be remembered. She's real, Tessa said quietly. She's just not ours to claim. She belongs to herself, to her mission, to whatever she's fighting for. We're just lucky she crossed our path. They stood there for another moment, 6 survivors surrounding an empty chair, feeling the weight of everything that had been said and unsaid over 20 years of annual dinners. Then Ryland picked up his glass one final time. To the ghosts who walk among us, to the warriors who fight in silence, to the woman who carries her husband's name and refuses to let evil go unpunished. May she find rest when her war is finally over. And may she know that 6 lives she saved have been lived with gratitude and purpose. They drank, they embraced, they promised to meet again next year. And when they left that restaurant, the empty chair remained at the table for a few minutes before the staff cleared it away. But its presence lingered, a promise kept, a debt acknowledged, a ghost honored. Somewhere in the city, a woman with dark hair and old eyes sat on a bench watching traffic pass. She'd spent 20 minutes in that restaurant watching 6 people who didn't know she was there, listening to them laugh and remember and live the lives she'd given them. It was worth it, all of it. The 12 years hunting, the missions in the dark, the scars and the nightmares and the loneliness, because they were happy. They were whole. They were everything she'd hoped they'd become. Her phone buzzed. Message from an unknown number. Thank you for coming. Even if you didn't stay, it meant everything. She smiled, typed a response. 20 years is a long time to keep a promise. I had to see it for myself. Will we see you again? Maybe. Maybe not. But you'll know I'm out there. Still walking, still watching, still making sure people like you get to go home to their families. Stay safe, Reeve. You too, Rylan. You too. She deleted the conversation, wiped the phone, dropped it in a trash can. Then she stood and walked into the night, carrying Marcus's name and the memory of 6 soldiers who'd refused to forget her. The work continued. The watch went on. But now, for the first time in 20 years, she knew she wasn't walking alone. Somewhere behind her, 6 people were living proof that what she did mattered, and that was enough to keep going. 5 years after the restaurant sighting, Rylan received a package that changed everything. It arrived on a Wednesday morning. Plain brown box. No return address. Just his name and a postmark from Montana. Inside was a thumb drive, a handwritten letter, and a photograph he'd never seen before. The photograph showed a young couple standing on a beach. The man was tall, dark-haired, smiling like the world was full of good things. The woman beside him was younger than Rylan had ever imagined Reeve could be. Maybe 25, with long hair and eyes that hadn't yet seen what they would eventually witness. They looked happy, completely, unreservedly happy. Marcus and Reeve, before everything. The letter was written in the same careful handwriting as the note on the photograph from years ago. Rylan, I'm writing this because I've made a decision and you deserve to know. I've spent 25 years fighting, 12 hunting Korsakov, another 13 trying to figure out who I am when I'm not hunting. I thought I could retire. Thought I could walk away. Eastern Europe proved I was wrong. I can't stop. It's not in me to ignore people dying when I have the skills to help, but I also can't keep doing this alone. I'm 52 years old, my reflexes are slower, my hands shake on cold mornings. Eventually, time will do what enemies couldn't. It'll kill me. So I'm doing something I swore I'd never do. I'm building a team, not a military team, not an official operation, just people who've walked similar paths and understand what it means to operate in the shadows. People who can't walk away from injustice. People who know that sometimes the law isn't enough. The thumb drive contains details about what we're planning. It's not sanctioned, it's not legal in the traditional sense, but it's necessary. I'm reaching out to you because you've proven over 25 years that you can be trusted, that you understand what I am and what I do. I'm not asking you to join. I know you have a family, a life. You've earned your peace. But I need you to know what I'm doing, and I need you to promise that if this goes wrong, if we get exposed or killed or captured, you'll tell our story. Not the sanitized version, not the legend, the truth. Can you do that? The thumb drive is encrypted. Password is Marcus's birthday. May 15th, 1976. Oh, 5151976. Whatever happens next, thank you. For remembering. For protecting me. For showing me that some debts are worth keeping. Reeve Ryland sat at his desk for 20 minutes holding that letter. His wife found him there, pale and shaking. "What is it?" she asked. He showed her the letter, the photograph. Told her about the thumb drive. She read it twice, then looked at him with knowing eyes. "You're going to help her." "I'm retired." "That's not what I asked." Reland met her gaze. 28 years of marriage had taught her to read him better than he could read himself. "I don't know what she needs. I don't even know if I can help." "Look at the thumb drive, then decide." He booted up his laptop and inserted the drive, entered the password. The files that appeared were extensive. Mission briefs, target dossiers, operational plans, and a video file labeled simply, "Watch First." Ryland clicked it. Reeve's face filled the screen. She looked older than he remembered, lines around her eyes, gray threading through her dark hair, but her eyes were the same, sharp, tired, determined. "Ryland," she said, "if you're watching this, you've read my letter and you haven't immediately deleted everything. That tells me you're at least considering this." She took a breath. "What I'm building isn't a hit squad. It's not a vigilante group. It's a network of people who can do what official channels can't. We target human traffickers, war criminals, people who operate outside the law and use their power to hurt others. We don't work for money. We don't work for glory. We work because the alternative is letting monsters go unpunished." She paused. "I have 4 people committed so far. A former CIA analyst who got tired of watching targets walk free on technicalities. A combat medic who saw too many civilians die in war zones. An intelligence officer who lost her daughter to traffickers and couldn't get justice through legal means. And a sniper who learned everything she knows from me, one of your scholarship recipients." Ryland's breath caught. "Her name is Sarah Chen. No relation to your team member. She received the Silent Watch Scholarship 8 years ago. Became a Marine Scout sniper. Served 3 tours, saved 17 lives in combat that we know of. And when she came home, she couldn't adjust to a world where bad people got to keep being bad because of lawyers and jurisdictions and political considerations." Reeve leaned closer to the camera. "I'm not asking you to join us. I'm asking you to be our anchor. The person who knows what we're doing and why. The person who can tell our story if we don't make it back. The person who reminds us that what we do matters because it saves lives." Another pause. "In the files, you'll find our first 3 targets. All of them are documented. All of them are monsters. All of them are untouchable through official channels. We're going to make them touchable." She smiled. It was a tired thing. 25 years ago, I saved 6 strangers because I couldn't walk away from people dying. You've spent 25 years remembering that, honoring it. Now I'm asking you to remember this too. Whatever happens next, we tried. We fought. We made the world a little bit better in the only way we knew how." The video ended. Ryland sat in silence staring at the blank screen. His wife's hand found his shoulder. "She's building what the world won't acknowledge it needs," she said quietly. "She's building something dangerous. She's been dangerous for 25 years. At least now she won't be alone." Ryland looked at the files. 3 targets. All of them deserved what was coming. All of them would never face justice through normal channels. And Reeve was going to make sure they faced it anyway. He made a decision. He called his team. Within 6 hours, they were gathered in his study. All of them. Lance had driven 12 hours. Morrison had canceled a speaking engagement. Tessa had left her training program. Chen had walked out of a client meeting. Davis had rescheduled his entire week. Ryland showed them the letter, the video, the files. They watched in silence. When it ended, nobody spoke for a long time. Finally, Lance said, "She wants us to be her witnesses." "Yes, not her teammates, her witnesses. She knows we have lives, families. She's not asking us to fight, just to remember." "And if she dies?" Morrison asked. "Then we tell the truth about who she was, what she did, why it mattered." Tessa was staring at the screen. "Sarah Chen, one of our scholarship recipients. She's out there with Reeve right now, learning to be what Reeve is, yeah." "The scholarship worked," Davis said quietly. "We created exactly what we intended. Women who walk the path Reeve walked. women who refuse to let injustice stand. And now one of them is about to become a ghost, Chen added, operating in shadows, fighting battles no one will know about. Rylan looked at each of them in turn. The question is, do we support this? Do we become complicit in what she's planning? She saved our lives, Lance said. I'll support whatever she needs. Even if it's illegal? Morrison pressed. Especially if it's illegal. The law failed her 25 years ago when it couldn't touch Korsakov. She spent 12 years fixing that failure. Now she's going to spend however many years she has left fixing other failures. Tessa nodded. I'm in. Whatever she needs. Witness, anchor, support. I'm in. Davis and Chen agreed. Morrison took longer, wrestling with the implications, but eventually he nodded too. We're all in, Ryland said. So the question is, what does she actually need from us? They spent the next 4 hours going through the files. The targets were all thoroughly documented. A human trafficker in Southeast Asia who'd evaded prosecution for 15 years. A warlord in Africa who'd committed atrocities that the international courts ignored. A corporate executive who used shell companies to fund terrorist organizations and had diplomatic immunity. Each file included operational plans, entry routes, exfiltration strategies, contingencies. Reeve and her team had done their homework. This is professional, Tessa said. Military-grade planning. Because she's been doing it for 25 years, Rylan replied. She knows what she's doing. So what do we do? Lance asked. Rylan thought about it. We create a dead man's switch. If she doesn't check in every month, we release the files. We tell the story. We make sure the world knows what she accomplished and why she did it. That's all? That's everything. She doesn't need our permission. She doesn't need our blessing. She just needs to know that if this goes wrong, the truth won't die with her. They set it up that night. A secure server, encrypted files, a dead man's switch that required monthly confirmation. If Reeve or her team failed to check in, the files would automatically be sent to trusted journalists, human rights organizations, and military contacts who would understand what they were seeing. Ryland sent Reeve a message on the secure channel. We're in. All of us. We'll be your witnesses. Your anchor, your insurance policy. Do what you need to do. We've got your back. The response came 3 hours later. Thank you. This means more than you know. First operation launches in 2 weeks. If you don't hear from me by the end of the month, tell Sarah Chen's parents that their daughter died serving a cause she believed in. Tell them she saved lives they'll never know about. Tell them she mattered. We will, but we won't have to, because you're going to bring her home. I'll try. That's all any of us can do. The conversation ended there. 2 weeks later, Rylan woke up to news reports about a major human trafficking operation that had been mysteriously destroyed in Southeast Asia. 17 traffickers dead. 43 victims rescued and safely delivered to authorities. No claims of responsibility, no witnesses. Just bodies and freed hostages and a lot of unanswered questions. Ryland's phone buzzed at noon. 1 down, everyone came home. Moving to target 2. He shared the message with his team. They gathered virtually that evening, watching news coverage of the Southeast Asian operation, seeing Reeve's handiwork in every detail. She's doing it, Morrison said. She's actually pulling this off. With help, Tessa added, with a team, the way she should have been operating all along. 3 months later, the African warlord was killed in what local authorities called a mysterious assault on his compound. His entire command structure was dismantled in one night. His weapons caches were destroyed, his financial networks were exposed and frozen. Reeve's message. 2 down. Minor injuries, but everyone's operational. Target 3 requires more planning. This one's going to be complicated. Target 3 was the corporate executive with diplomatic immunity. He was protected by layers of security, legal shields, and political connections. Hitting him would create international incidents and serious exposure risks. It took Reeve's team 8 months to plan it. When they finally moved, it wasn't a kill mission. It was an exposure operation. They stole documents, recorded conversations, gathered evidence that proved beyond any doubt what the executive was doing. Then they delivered it simultaneously to 20 different news organizations and law enforcement agencies across 5 countries. The executive was arrested within 48 hours. His diplomatic immunity was revoked. His assets were frozen. His network was destroyed. Reeve's message? 3 down. No casualties. This one feels different. We didn't kill him, we just made him face justice the way it should have happened years ago. I think Marcus would approve. Ryland shared that with his team. They gathered in person this time. Their annual dinner. 26 years of keeping an empty chair. Except this year, when they arrived at the restaurant, someone was sitting in it. Sarah Chen, young. 26, dark hair pulled back. Wearing civilian clothes but carrying herself like the Marine sniper she'd been. She stood when they approached. Major Cross, she said. Sergeant Vale, I'm Sarah Chen. Reeve asked me to attend this year's dinner, to represent the team, to say thank you. Ryland stared. Where is she? On another operation. But she wanted me here. Wanted you to meet me. Wanted you to know that the scholarship you created, the Silent Watch Scholarship, it changed my life. It made me who I am. And now I'm carrying on what Reeve started. They sat down. 7 people instead of 6. The empty chair finally filled. Sarah told them about the operations, about working with Reeve, about learning to operate in shadows and silence, about the team they'd built, 5 operators now, all women, all carrying their own reasons for fighting battles the world wouldn't acknowledge. We're not vigilantes, Sarah said. We're not criminals. We're just people who couldn't walk away from injustice. Same as Reeve. Same as you. How long can you keep this up? Lance asked. I don't know. As long as we can. As long as there are monsters who think they're untouchable. As long as the law fails and the system breaks, and people need help that won't come through official channels. And Reeve? Tessa asked. How is she holding up? Sarah smiled. She's incredible. Still the best shot I've ever seen. Still the smartest tactician. Still the person I aspire to be. But she's also teaching us. Making sure we can continue this work when she can't anymore. Building something that outlasts her. She's creating a legacy, Morrison said. She's creating justice, Sarah corrected. Real justice. The kind that doesn't depend on lawyers or jurisdictions or political will. The kind that just happens. Because someone decided it should. They talked for hours. About operations and ethics and the line between justice and vengeance. About the toll this work took and the reasons it mattered. About whether what they were doing was right or just necessary. When the dinner ended, Sarah stood to leave. Reeve wanted me to give you something, she said. She pulled out an envelope and handed it to Rylan. Inside was another photograph. This one showed 5 women standing on a mountain ridge at dawn. Reeve was in the center, older but unbowed. Around her were 4 younger women, all armed, all carrying themselves with the kind of confidence that came from knowing exactly what they were capable of. On the back, the watch continues. The work goes on. But now I'm not walking alone. Thank you for making this possible. Rylan showed it to his team. They passed it around, each of them understanding what they were seeing. The legend had become a legacy. The ghost had become a teacher. The woman who'd saved them 26 years ago was now saving others and teaching the next generation how to do the same. Sarah left with promises to attend next year's dinner, to bring updates, to maintain the connection between Reeve's team and the people who'd started the chain of events that made it all possible. After she was gone, Ryland's team sat in silence. We did this, Lance finally said. The scholarship, the support, the promise to remember. We created this. Reeve created this, Ryland corrected. We just gave her the foundation to build on. And now it's bigger than her, Tessa added. It's a movement, a network, something that'll outlast all of us. Is that good? Morrison asked. I don't know, Ryland admitted. But I know that 26 years ago, one woman decided 6 strangers were worth saving. And because she made that choice, a whole chain of events followed. The scholarship, the network, the team. Sarah Chen and 4 others carrying on the fight. All of it traces back to one moment in the mountains when someone chose courage over safety. You think she knew? Chen asked. When she saved us, did she know it would lead to this? No. She just did what she thought was right. Same as we did. Same as Sarah and the others are doing now. None of us knew where it would lead. We just kept making the next right choice. They sat with that for a while. Then Davis raised his glass. To choices. To courage. To the woman who saved us and everyone she's saved since. May her watch never end and her aim never falter. They drank to that. Over the next 5 years, Ryland's team watched from a distance as Reeve's network grew. 8 operators, then 10, then 15, all women, all highly trained, all operating in the shadows, targeting people who thought they were untouchable. The news occasionally reported mysterious incidents. Criminal organizations destroyed overnight. War criminals eliminated. Human trafficking rings dismantled. The authorities never found suspects, never made arrests, just cleaned up the aftermath and moved on. Reeve's team checked in monthly, sometimes through Sarah, sometimes through brief messages. Once, through a video call where Ryland got to see the whole team gathered together, 15 women ranging from 25 to 55, all committed to the same cause. Reeve looked tired in that video, older, but also content, like she'd finally found the thing she'd been searching for since Marcus died. We're making a difference, she told Rylan. Real, measurable difference. Hundreds of lives saved, dozens of monsters stopped, and we're doing it together, as a team, the way it should always have been. How long can you keep this up? Rylan asked. As long as I have to. But the beauty of building a team is that it doesn't depend on me anymore. If I fall, they continue, the work goes on. That's the whole point. You've created something incredible. We created something incredible, you and your team, the scholarship, the support, the promise to remember. All of it made this possible. We're just the execution. Reeve, I'm 60 years old, Rylan. I've spent 30 years fighting. I'm ready for it to end. But not until the work is done, not until we've built something strong enough to outlast me. And then what? She smiled. Then maybe I sit at that empty chair, fill it properly, stay for the whole dinner, meet the people who've been remembering me for 30 years. We'd like that. So would I, but not yet. There's still work to do. The call ended. 3 years later, on a cold morning in November, Rylan received the call he'd been dreading. Sarah Chen's voice was steady, but he could hear the tears underneath. Rylan, it's Reeve. There was an operation. It went wrong. She didn't make it. The world stopped. What happened? Human trafficking ring in Central America. We were extracting victims, 50 children. Reeve provided overwatch while the rest of us got them out. But they had more security than we anticipated. Someone got a shot off, hit her in the chest. We did everything we could, but Sarah's voice broke. She held on long enough for us to complete the extraction. All 50 kids got out. Then she told us to leave her, to finish the mission, to make sure the kids were safe. By the time we came back for her, she was gone. Rylan closed his eyes. Where is she now? We brought her home. Montana. There's a place in the mountains she loved, where she used to train. We buried her there. No marker, no ceremony. Just a place where the trees grow tall and the silence is complete. She deserves better than that. She deserves exactly what she wanted. To rest in the mountains. To be part of the wild places she loved. To fade into legend instead of being pinned down by monuments and memorials. Sarah was right. Rylan knew she was right. What happens to the team? We continue. That's what she trained us for. We keep operating, keep fighting, keep making sure monsters don't get to keep being monsters. The work doesn't end just because she did. Sarah, she left something for you. A letter. I'm sending it now. The letter arrived by secure courier that evening. Rylan's team gathered to read it together, all of them sitting in his living room, all of them remembering the woman who'd changed their lives 30 years ago. Rylan, if you're reading this, I'm dead. Strange thing to write, but it's true. And I'm okay with it. I've lived 30 years longer than I expected to after Marcus died. I've saved hundreds of lives. I've built something that'll continue after I'm gone. That's more than most people get. I need you to do something for me. I need you to tell my story. Not the sanitized version, not the legend, the real story. Who I was, what I did, why it mattered. Tell people about Marcus, about the hunt, about the 30 years I spent trying to make the world a little bit better in the only way I knew how. Tell them about the mountains, about 6 soldiers I saved because I couldn't walk away, about a scholarship that created a whole generation of women who refused to let injustice stand, about a team that'll keep fighting long after I'm gone. Tell them the truth. That I wasn't a hero, just someone who couldn't stop fighting, someone who carried grief and anger for 30 years and turned it into something useful, someone who saved lives because saving lives was all I knew how to do. And tell them that at the end, I wasn't alone anymore. I had a team. I had people who understood what I was doing and why. I had you and your team keeping watch, remembering, making sure the work could continue. That's all anyone can ask for, to not die alone. To leave something behind, to matter. Thank you for 30 years of remembering, for keeping that chair empty, for building the scholarship, for supporting me when I needed it most. You gave me something I thought I'd lost when Marcus died, proof that some people still care about doing the right thing, even when it's hard. Take care of Sarah and the others. They're good people. They'll continue the work. They'll make sure the monsters keep paying. They'll keep saving lives. And keep that chair empty. Because even though I'm gone, I'll always be part of your story, the same way you're all part of mine. Walk easy, Rylan. You earned it. Reeve. The room was silent when they finished reading. Then Tessa started crying. Quiet tears that said more than words. Lance joined her, then Morrison, then all of them, grieving a woman they'd known only through distance and legend, but who'd shaped their entire lives. Rylan held the letter with shaking hands. We tell her story, he said finally. Exactly as she asked, the real story. No censorship, no sanitization, just the truth. The military will hate it, Davis said. Probably, but we don't answer to them anymore. We answer to her memory and the promise we made. They spent the next year writing it, all 6 of them contributing. They told the story of the mountains, of Reeve's hunt for Korsakov, of the network she built and the lives she saved. They included everything: the illegal operations, the vigilante justice, the bodies left behind, the monsters stopped. They called it The Ghost and The Watch. When they tried to publish it, 3 different publishers rejected it as too controversial. The 4th agreed on the condition that it be clearly labeled as fiction. They accepted. The book came out 2 years after Reeves' death. It became a phenomenon. Readers debated whether it was real or imagined. Journalists investigated and found evidence supporting some of the claims, but nothing definitive. The military refused to comment. Intelligence agencies issued denials. But people who'd been saved, victims of trafficking, survivors of war crimes, families who'd lost loved ones to monsters who'd been mysteriously stopped, those people knew. They reached out quietly. They said thank you. They confirmed details that hadn't been made public. The truth spread through whispers and knowing glances, and people who understood that some stories are too important to be silenced by official channels. Sarah Chen attended the book launch. She didn't speak publicly, didn't confirm or deny anything, just sat in the back row with 14 other women who all had the same look in their eyes, the look of people who'd seen combat and decided the fight was worth continuing. After the launch, Sarah approached Rylan. "She'd be proud," Sarah said. "I hope so." "The work continues. We've expanded to 23 operators now. All women, all committed, all walking the path Reeve walked." "The Silent Watch Scholarship?" "It's our primary recruitment tool. We find women who have the skills and the drive. We train them. We make sure Reeves' legacy doesn't just survive, it thrives." "That's incredible." "It's what she wanted, what she built. We're just maintaining it." Sarah handed him a photograph. 23 women standing on a mountain ridge, same pose as the photo from years ago. But more of them, all carrying the torch forward. "Keep the chair empty," Sarah said. "But know that she's still with us. In every operation, every life saved, every monster stopped. She's part of all of it. Always will be." Sarah left. Reland stood there holding the photograph, understanding that the woman he'd known for 30 years had accomplished something most people only dream of. She'd changed the world, one life at a time, one operation at a time, one generation of warriors learning from her example. The annual dinners continued, the chair stayed empty. But now they invited different guests each year, women from the Silent Watch Scholarship, women who'd been saved by Reeves' team, people who understood what the empty chair represented and why it mattered. The network grew. 30 operators, then 40, then 50, all operating in shadows, all making sure monsters paid, all carrying Reeves' legacy forward. Rylan lived to see his grandson graduate from high school, saw his team members become grandparents themselves, saw the Silent Watch Scholarship help hundreds of women serve with honor and distinction, and every year, without fail, they gathered around a table with one empty chair. The last annual dinner Rylan attended was his 45th. He was 75 years old. Tessa and Lance were the only other original team members still alive. But the table was full, filled with people whose lives had been touched by Reeves' legacy. Sarah Chen was there, now in her 50s, still operational, still teaching the next generation. She brought 6 young women with her, the newest recruits to the network. Rylan looked at them and saw what Reeve had created, a movement that would outlast them all, a force for justice that operated outside official channels, but with absolute conviction. "Tell them," Rylan said to Sarah. "Tell them the story, all of it, start to finish. Make sure they understand what they're part of." Sarah did. She told them about the mountains, about 6 soldiers who should have died, but didn't, about a woman who spent 30 years fighting battles no one would acknowledge, about a scholarship that created opportunities and a network that turned those opportunities into justice. The young women listened with rapt attention. When Sarah finished, one of them, barely 25, with sharp eyes and steady hands, spoke up. "Is it true? All of it?" "Every word," Rylan said. "I was there in those mountains. I saw what she could do. And I've spent 45 years watching her legacy grow into something that changes lives. Then I want to be part of it. I want to walk that path. I want to make sure the work continues." "You already are," Sarah said gently. "The moment you accepted the scholarship, the moment you chose to serve, the moment you decided that justice matters more than comfort, you're already walking the path. We're just here to make sure you don't walk it alone." Rylan died 6 months later, peacefully, in his sleep, surrounded by family. At his funeral, an honor guard fired volleys into the sky. His team members spoke. His family grieved. And in the back, unnoticed by most, stood 20 women who all had the same look in their eyes. They were Reeves' legacy. The watchers in the shadows, the ghosts who made sure monsters paid. Sarah Chen stood among them, now the eldest, and thought about how one woman's choice to save 6 strangers had created all of this. How 30 years of remembering had built something that would span generations. She thought about Reeve, resting in unmarked mountains, part of the wild places she loved. And she thought about the work that continued, the operations planned, the lives that would be saved, the justice that would be delivered. The watch went on. It always would. Because some debts are paid across lifetimes. Some promises span generations. Some heroes never die. They just become the stories that inspire others to be brave when bravery is needed most. The empty chair remained at every annual dinner, a symbol, a promise, a reminder that somewhere in the mountains a woman named Reeve had decided that 6 strangers were worth saving, and because she made that choice, hundreds more had been saved since. The work continued. The watch never ended. And in the silence between heartbeats and gunshots, in the space where justice met necessity, Reeve's legacy lived on, forever walking, forever watching, forever refusing to let darkness win. Some heroes are never recorded. They live only in the lives they refuse to let die. But those lives, those saved, changed, inspired lives, they become the greatest monument any warrior could ask for. Not marble or bronze, but breath and heartbeat and the simple, profound act of continuing to exist because someone chose courage over safety. That is legacy. That is what lasts.